Chapter 425. Half an hour later, outside the Eternal Tree, Wang Lu and Lan flew toward Flaming Valley on their flying swords. Are we just going to leave like this? When they left the Eternal Tree, Lan was very confused. Wang Lu funnily asked, "What else can I do if I don't go? Leave you to give him a child?" It was just a joke, but Lan seriously thought about it. After a long time she asked, "Why should I give him a child?" Wang Lu continued to tease her. "In order to leave a descendant for your Grey Mountain. You can't just win the 5 blood spirit crown, but let your Grey Mountain be cut off." Lan said, "Why him?" "Because Zhang Zai's breed is excellent, and the key is that he can complement you. His only specialty is his high IQ, while your biggest defect is your low IQ. So that's how it is." Lan somewhat reluctantly accepted Wang Lu's statement. "So, do you want me to go back?" "Forget it." Wang Lu sighed, lamenting that it was indeed interesting to tease a smart person, but teasing a disabled person like Lan was not pleasurable at all. Thus, he kept his mouth shut. Leaving the Eternal Tree had its own reason. Zhang Zai and his Eternal Tree strategy was indeed a necessary part, but was it easy to persuade him to carry out the specific implementation? Shaman's final request for an orphan was a life-and-death test, which was almost impossible for Zhang Zai to cross. Because the most difficult thing for the nerds of 10,000 Arts sect to cross was the test of love. If they didn't get in heat, it was fine, but once in heat, it was often out of control. In the past, there was a senior of 10,000 Arts sect who, in order to win a beauty's smile, took her to the endless sea to see a kind of strange beast called golden phoenix fish. As a result, the strange beast launched an attack, and both of them died. The disciples of 10,000 Arts sect had always been indifferent to worldly things. However, when it came to love, their IQ would rapidly degenerate to the point that they were even inferior to Royal Soldier sect. And now, Zhang Zai was likely to be in heat without knowing it. Shaman was a member of the fairy race in the forest of the Eternal Tree. She was extremely beautiful, had a charming figure, and had a natural charm, which made her extremely attractive to the opposite sex. Coupled with her innate intelligence, Zhang Zai, after being with her for a long time, inevitably had his heart moved. Of course, with his self-control as the lead disciple, he would not do such a despicable act to ruin his marriage. Previously, he and Shaman had an ambiguous relationship unconsciously. If he noticed the change in his mentality, he would naturally know how to restrain himself. Unfortunately, Shaman was dead. Perhaps Zhang Zai would never find out that he had unknowingly fallen in love with a person, but the influence of love would remain. Perhaps Zhang Zai would regard the 2 children as important as his own life. It was easier said than done to convince him to sacrifice those 2 people. After a confrontation in the Eternal Tree, Wang Lu succeeded in making Zhang Zai speechless. However, he was very clear that the other side was not convinced. Therefore, he added more weight and let the 2 children listen to the dialogue and choose their own future. However, he could only do so much. The last step was to take a risk. Inciting the Boy Scouts was, after all, not a good idea. In particular, Zhang Zai would certainly be angered. If Wang Lu stayed here, not to mention forming an alliance with Zhang Zai, he would immediately have to face the other side's all-out attack. But now, Wang Lu retreated in order to advance, letting Zhang Zai face the 2 raging children alone. With Zhang Zai's ability, it would not be easy for him to coax the children. However, it was hard for Wang Lu to say how effective this move would be. Whether the Eternal Tree would have enough time to rise from the ground and block Qianghua on the battlefield was still unknown. The Eternal Tree is just the last choice. Before that, it will depend on me and senior brother Xiang Liang to support the situation. It's really a bit difficult. In less than half a day, Wang Lu and his follower finally entered the boundary of Flaming Valley. The volcano in the center of Flaming Valley was roaring angrily. The lava surged down from the valley that had been washed for thousands of years. The lava was dark red, as if it was a warrior bathed in blood. Flaming Valley had fallen into an extremely unfavorable situation. Not long ago, the King of Harmony River launched a long-distance raid straight to the capital of Golden City. Admittedly, this made the master of Golden City lose face, and the 12 pure gold guards were destroyed in the final blow. However, this legendary raid also released a terrifying opponent, Qianghua Fairy. After Qianghua Fairy came out of seclusion, she only did 2 things. One was to suppress the entire territory of Golden City. As the new city master, she controlled all the city masters of the sub-cities, thus indirectly controlling the entire country. Her means were more overbearing than the previous one. The second thing was that she personally came out and led the Golden Jade Army to confront the Flaming Valley Army head-on. Within half a day, the barbarian invaders were routed and the foreign enemies were wiped out. Flaming Valley suffered heavy casualties and even suffered serious injuries. In particular, Qionghua's monstrous might on the battlefield directly crushed the inextinguishable morale of the barbarians that they were proud of. Those warriors who regarded death as glory unexpectedly did not dare to be her enemy, and directly retreated to the territory of Flaming Valley. Fortunately, after these two things were done, Qionghuo temporarily stopped her footsteps. Because Xiang Liang came back just in time. This lead disciple of royal soldier sect was the only one who had the capital to face Qionghuo head-on. Previously, Wang Lu did not hesitate to painstakingly win the friendship of Xiang Liang for this irreplaceable and powerful force. And Xiang Liang indeed did not disappoint. After he returned to Flaming Valley, he directly found the king of Flaming Valley and forcefully seized the command of the Flaming Valley Guards. He then rushed to the battlefield and fought with Qionghua's Golden Jade Army for a whole day. After paying a heavy price, he finally succeeded in blocking Qionghuo. The only pity was that the casualties were indeed too heavy. Senior brother Xiang Liang, you really have a whole new level of respect after 3 days. In the frontline barracks of Flaming Valley, Wang Lu couldn't bear to look straight at the wounded who was wrapped like a dumpling on the sickbed. Unexpectedly, only 3 days have passed, and I've only fought with Qionghuo once. But the price is so heavy. The dumpling on the sickbed trembled a bit and issued a hoarse grunt. The sound was full of pain. Obviously, the severity of the injury had been difficult to suppress. Wang Lu was inwardly shocked. He was very clear about Xiang Liang's ability. In the ambush in the valley, more than 10 people from Shangjing's sect besieged him, yet he was able to complete the 100 men beheading. From this, Xiang Liang's tyrannical strength could be clearly seen. However, under the hands of Qionghuo, he unexpectedly ended up like this. At this time, the breath of the person lying on the sickbed was so weak that it was almost non-existent. He was really only half a step away from death. Where was the prestige of the lead disciple of royal soldier sect? Qionghuo, oh Qionghuo, did you, the veteran King Pill, specially come to slaughter the young? Looking at the painful Xiang Liang lying on the sickbed, Wang Lu sighed. Forget it, senior brother Xiang Liang, to be able to fight against King Pill Qionghuo in shoot on stage is already not bad. Leave the rest to me. In any case, I'm also the initiator of the alliance, so I can't just shoot my mouth off, right? Otherwise, in the future, I probably can only marry a little Lolita as my wife, which is really not my aesthetic. Just as Wang Lu finished sighing with emotion and turned to leave the ward, a slightly weak voice suddenly sounded behind him. What do you mean by little Lolita? Looking back, Xiang Liang's pale face was right in front of him. After not seeing him for 3 days, Xiang Liang still had the old-fashioned look and sword-like eyes of the lead disciple of royal soldier sect. The only difference was that his breath was a lot weaker. However, looking at Xiang Liang's upright posture and his undiminished sharp eyes, anyone would know how stupid it was to underestimate him. Even if he was weak, the lead disciple of royal soldier sect still had a strong explosive power. At that time, Qionghuo was forced to retreat by Xiang Liang, probably because of this. However, Wang Lu was more concerned about the issue at this time. I heard people say that this is your tent, then the one on the bed is? Xiang Liang glanced at the dumpling and then replied in a deep voice. The warrior who made the greatest contribution in the decisive battle. The medical conditions in Flaming Valley are limited, and my medicinal pills have been used up in the battle. All I can do is to provide him with a better environment as much as possible, but it seems that he won't be able to hold on for long. So that's how it is. It seems like I've watched too many melodramatic dramas recently, which really affects my IQ. Wang Lu smiled helplessly. However, Xiang Liang was still obsessed with the original question. What does little Lolita mean? Nothing, it's not a problem that needs to be concerned about right now. Senior brother Xiang Liang, how do you feel about your fight with senior sister Qionghuo? Xiang Liang seriously said, invincible in this world. I relied on the general and soldier unity technique of royal soldier sect to gather the power of thousands of Flaming Valley Guards to barely fight her. However, after the fight, more than half of the Flaming Valley Guards were lost, and I was also seriously injured. It would be difficult for me to fight again in a short time. Is Xueqi injured? Only a minor injury. Although the magical power consumption is great, she is in the King Pill realm, so she should be able to recover in 1 or 2 days. Hearing this, Wang Lu couldn't help but curse. In his mind, he had to overturn the original plan and replan the countermeasures. During the silence, Xiang Liang suddenly asked, "What is my aesthetics?" Fuck. Senior brother Xiang Liang. Do you want to jump ship to 10,000 art sect? You're so curious that you want to ask about all the insignificant details? Xiang Liang said, really? Then I'll change the question. How are you going to fight with Xueqi? This question is a bit too sharp. Let me think about it. Wang Lu said while thinking. But frankly speaking, he really didn't have a good way. In the original plan, Xiang Liang had to at least drag Xueqi for several times longer, so that he would have the confidence to come forward and deal with Xueqi until Zhanzai finally broke the barrier of love and launched the eternal tree. But now, Xiang Liang no longer had the power to fight, and the whole plan chain was completely interrupted. And if he wanted to continue the next chain, it was easier said than done. While he was thinking hard, the ground suddenly trembled. Xiang Liang's complexion changed. He leaned over and put his ear to the ground. After a moment, he softly said, "Xueqi is here." Wang Lu could only wryly smile. Senior sister Xueqi was indeed formidable. In addition to her tyrannical strength that was above everyone else, her ability to lay out a plan was also above the standard. She simply calculated his side's weakness, and at the most inappropriate time, she launched a strong attack. Well. Xiang Liang stood up, looked at Wang Lu for a moment, and then nodded. The rest is up to you, junior brother Wang Lu. At this time, Wang Lu finally had an idea. With a smile on his face, he stepped out of Xiang Liang's tent. Rest assured, it's just a trivial Xueqi. I already have a way. With that, he clenched the mustard seed bag. Chapter 426. Outside the tent, Xueqi very slowly approached. Although her pace was slow, every step she took caused the mountains to shake and the earth to shake. Moreover, her vigorous magic power spread out unscrupulously, like a thick dark cloud shrouding the sky above the camp, making it difficult for people to breathe. At this time, Xueqi was still far away from the army of Flaming Valley. She had not even really appeared, but her imposing manner alone had already frightened the barbarian soldiers of Flaming Valley. The fearless soldiers revealed fear in their eyes. Although the army had not been routed, their fighting spirit had completely collapsed. In this battle, Xueqi single-handedly forced Flaming Valley into a desperate situation without even a single soldier. Wang Lu had to sigh with emotion that the strength of this lead disciple of Shangjing sect was really beyond the others in this world. Not to mention the difference between Jindan stage and Shudan stage was like a natural moat. Even among the several lead disciples of Taoist master of Jindan stage, Xueqi was undoubtedly the strongest. In terms of actual combat, the previously insufferably arrogant Tiger King Lei Zhan on Grand Cloud Mountain might not necessarily be able to withstand 10 moves from the current low-level Jindan stage Xueqi. Even with his spirit beast, he could only barely fight to a draw. In a head-on fight with such a person, it was really difficult to talk about winning. No matter how fierce Wang Lu's non-phase sword was, he could not win against Xueqi with a gap of 1 level. Therefore, he did not intend to fight the other side head-on. After walking out of the tent, Wang Lu once again checked the hidden items in his mustard seed bag, and then operated his magical power several times to adjust his state to the best. After confirming that there was no mistake, his non-phase immortal heart suddenly turned, and his face immediately raised a bright smile like the sun. The change was so fast that several barbarian soldiers outside the tent, who were trembling under the pressure of Xueqi, could not help but rub their eyes, as if they had seen a ghost. However, a moment later, they suddenly felt warm in their heart, and the invisible pressure in the air gradually reduced. The feeling was like a spring breeze, and the source of the spring breeze was the bright smile of Wang Lu. If the distant Xueqi sect was like the coldness that enveloped the world in the deep winter, then at this time, Wang Lu was like a stove that was close at hand. He also walked slowly, facing Xueqi from a distance. When he walked out of the camp, the snow behind him had melted. It was not a deliberate attack, but just the aftermath of the non-phase immortal heart's full operation. Although he did not intend to confront Xueqi directly, Wang Lu was about to face this unprecedentedly strong enemy. Therefore, Wang Lu still showed all his skills. As soon as he revealed his skills, Xiang Liang in the tent turned his head in surprise. What a powerful formless immortal heart! His realm had far exceeded the Shudan realm, and with such accumulation, if it were anyone else, they would have already tried to break through the king pill. However, Wang Lu had been able to keep his composure. Unfortunately, no matter how powerful a Shudan was, in the end, a Shudan was still a Shudan. It was fine for her to challenge other Taoist Master King Pill, but as the lead disciple of Shangjing's sect, how could Qionghua's accumulation before her breakthrough not be extremely deep? If he could not pass the King Pill, he would not have any chance. However, if he could advance from the Void Core to the King Pill. Thinking of this, Xiang Liang suddenly felt a flash of light in his mind. Although he was inexperienced in the ways of the world, he was a rare genius in cultivation. He suddenly thought of a possibility, but he immediately shook his head and rejected it. Breakthrough at the last moment? This was the King Pill. Even if Wang Lu's accumulation was deep enough, coupled with his amazing spirit root qualification, there would be no bottleneck during the breakthrough. But after the breakthrough, he would have to spend a period of time to suppress the King Pill and stabilize his cultivation base. During this period, he would not be able to use his magical power freely, making it impossible for him to fight with others. If Wang Lu wanted to make a breakthrough at the last moment, he should have done it earlier, but now he had no chance. However, Wang Lu's way of doing things had always been unexpected. Let's take this opportunity to see what he was going to use to block Qionghuo. While he was thinking, Wang Lu and Qionghuo finally met. When the two of them met, Qionghuo happened to reach the top of the mountain. She looked down disdainfully with a touch of curiosity in her eyes. Wang Lu stood at the foot of the mountain, looking up at her with a smile on his face. This was the first time they met in this immortal dreamland, but their imposing manner was vaguely comparable. Senior sister Qionghuo, long time no see. Qionghuo smiled. It's indeed been a long time. As the lead disciple of Shangjing's sect, Qionghuo was always calm and courteous. However, it was better to use peaceful means before resorting to force. Only when she made her move would people realize how sharp her methods were behind her polite smile. After a brief greeting, Wang Lu went straight to the point. Senior sister Qionghuo, I want to make a deal with you. Qionghuo nodded. I'd like to hear the details. In this 5-blood spirit crown battle, senior sister Qionghuo's strength is far beyond that of her peers. Now, victory is already in your grasp. Even if the several of us join forces, it will still be difficult for us to contend against you. Hearing this, Qionghuo was quite surprised. Whether it was the sect's intelligence or her understanding of Wang Lu, he was the kind of person who would never admit defeat. He would definitely fight to the end and seize the last chance to turn the tables. But now he actually said such words? Probably, he was laying the groundwork for the real lines. Sure enough, as soon as Wang Lu finished speaking, he changed the topic. However, this is just a game, so what if I win? Shangjing's sect is the #1 sect in 9 regions, so we don't lack this bit of merit to consolidate our prestige. However, this trial has a special meaning for me, so I want to make a deal with senior sister. With that, Wang Lu took out a golden seal from his mustard seed bag. Qionghuo's beautiful eyes widened as she looked at the seal in Wang Lu's hand. Mysterious Sky's golden seal? Wang Lu said with a smile, yes, the Mysterious Sky's golden seal can be exchanged for more than 10 million spirit stones in the Mysterious Sky Mansion, which allows you to overdraft your spending and enjoy Mysterious Sky Mansion's high-class VIP treatment as well as various conveniences. Its authority is second only to the Mysterious Sky's black seal. At present, the Mysterious Sky Mansion has distributed no more than 3,000 of them in 9 regions. As long as senior sister Qionghuo is willing to let me win this round, I am willing to offer this Mysterious Sky's golden seal. Qionghuo was even more surprised. Junior brother Wang Lu, you? After a pause, as if trying to find the right words, a moment later, Qionghuo softly asked, are you bribing them? Wang Lu laughed. Senior sister Qionghuo doesn't know this, but this is not a bribe, but a political contribution. It's in accordance with the law, above board, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Qionghuo felt that she somewhat didn't understand. Oh, I know that senior sister Qionghuo, as the lead disciple of Shangjing's sect, has never worried about resources. As long as your cultivation needs it, let alone the Mysterious Sky's golden seal, even more precious resources will be bestowed by the sect. However, in my opinion, what the sect bestowed is just dead money. Because no matter how precious it is, after all, it has to be put under the sun. From the application to the approval to the use, each and every move is known by the sect's budget constraints. I know that senior sister Xueqi's conduct is above board and above board. However, everyone needs privacy, and on the path of cultivation, there will always be some expenses that are not known to everyone. This mysterious sky's golden seal is worth more than 10 million spirit stones. Moreover, it's a living money. No matter how senior sister uses it, you can do whatever you want. Now that senior sister Xueqi is a Taoist master of the King Pill, it's time for you to gradually break away from the shackles of the sect and start your own business. I think these 10 million spirit stones will certainly help you in your next step. More than just valuable? 10 million spirit stones. Many of the elders of the 5 super sects may not even have such a net worth. The reason why Wang Lu could have such a huge sum of money was thanks to his several gambling windfalls, which he then wisely invested in the development of his sect. Over the years, the scale of the industry has grown by leaps and bounds, and the dividends have increased year by year. In terms of wealth alone, Wang Lu's family was far richer than many of the elders. Although Xueqi was the lead disciple, she could freely dispose of her own money, which was no more than 1 million spirit stones. Looking at the golden seal in the hands of Wang Lu, Xueqi, who had always been accustomed to controlling the overall situation and suppressing everything, finally felt that she could not grasp the situation. Wang Lu, what exactly did he want to do? Wang Lu struck while the iron was hot. Moreover, this matter is only known by you and me. There is absolutely no risk. Even if the sect later pursues you, senior sister, it would be easy for you to shirk it. After all, I have a small reputation in the Onxian League, and I am accustomed to creating miraculous victories. It's not surprising that senior sister Xueqi occasionally lost to me. In the past, 2 of the holy ones of the Western continent were lost in my hands. Oh, I know that a golden seal alone is not enough to show my sincerity, so I will add one more thing. If senior sister is willing to help me, I promise to owe you a favor, which will be valid forever. Seriously speaking, the value of my, Wang Lu's favor is higher than this mysterious sky's golden seal. Because now it seems to be just a promise from a peak shoot-on stage cultivator, but in the future, when I reach Yuanying and deity stage, the value of this favor is difficult to estimate. Enough. Xueqi lightly interrupted. Enough. No need to say any more. Junior brother Wang Lu, I have seen your surprising ability, and the joke just now was indeed very funny, but I'm not here to listen to your jokes. Show me your real ability. Wang Lu sighed, played with the golden seal in his hand, and said, I am very serious, but senior sister, you only think that I am joking. It's really a pity. Do you really not want to think about it? Xueqi helplessly shook her head, and then unsheathed her blue sword. If you say it again, it will only make me look down on you. Wang Lu was silent for a while, and then quietly put away the mysterious sky's golden seal. The smile on his face sank a little bit. Very well, senior sister Xueqi, since you don't want to accept my sincere deal, then we can only meet on the battlefield. But before that, I want to ask you one thing. Xueqi's patience was amazing. She didn't mind that Wang Lu talked too much. She nodded and said, Please speak. Senior sister, do you mind if I bully you with numbers? Xueqi smiled but didn't speak. She just pointed the blue immortal sword in her hand forward. Even if you have thousands of troops and horses, I alone with my sword is enough. Wang Lu smiled and said, Very well, since senior sister is so bold, then I won't be polite. Let me introduce you to a friend. I met him when I was exploring the Western continent, and because of some reasons, he came with me to 9 regions. With that, Wang Lu took out a gray ball from his mustard seed bag, and then fiercely crushed it, causing a plume of gray smoke to rise. His name is Faceless One. Chapter 427. Almost as soon as the gray smoke rose, Xueqi made her move. The deep blue immortal sword, Immortal Dew, in her hand swung down with all her strength, merciless. The powerful primordial spirit made Fairy Xueqi immediately aware of the crisis. Although the faint gray smoke contained a weak energy, it carried a terrifying demonic power that was enough to move her. It was like an ancient devil that had broken free from its seal. Even though it was weak, it still had an overwhelming advantage in terms of cultivation. Xueqi was second to none among the lead disciples of the 5 uniques. However, the lead disciples of the 5 uniques were just disciples, and there were countless people who were more powerful than them in 9 regions. Therefore, Qianghua never overestimated her own ability. When she needed to go all out, she would never hold anything back. However, halfway through the swing of the immortal Du sword, Qianghua's eyes suddenly blurred, and the weight of the immortal sword in her hand suddenly changed. She felt that the sword was not real at all. Knowing that something was wrong, she immediately sealed her 5 senses, sank her primordial spirit, and the king pill in her jade mansion began to spin, and the light shone in all directions. That evil heart devil had unknowingly invaded her, and its speed was so fast that people simply couldn't react. Qianghua even suspected that Wang Lu's absurd bribery was just a cover for him to release his heart devil. Regarding Wang Lu's killing move, Qianghua did not dare to take it lightly. She immediately used Shangjing immortal method to stabilize her primordial spirit and immortal heart, and then tried to expel it. However, just as Qianghua finished all this, a sharp laughter sounded in her jade mansion. The devil that invaded her jade mansion was crazily laughing in a special language. Qianghua's heart turned cold. That language was something that she had learned in Shangjing sect, the common language of the Western continent. And the lines of the devil were, "Ha ha ha, accept the sanction of holy light, Far East heresy. Western continent holy light religion lunatics." More than a year ago, she went on an expedition to the Western continent with the 9 regions Wanxian League and deeply experienced the fierceness of the local natives. The fanatics of holy light religion acted in a radical manner, and in the eyes of the people of 9 regions, they have long been possessed by the devil. However, these fanatics who shouted the sanction of heresy were the madmen among the madmen, the devil without a doubt. The situation suddenly became tricky. Shangjing sect immortal method was the supreme method in 9 regions. As the lead disciple of Shangjing sect, Qianghua was confident that she could come up with a method to restrain any devil in 9 regions. However, the devil of Western continent was not one of them. Whether the 9 regions evil suppression immortal method could restrain the devils of the Western continent, no one could say for sure. However, Qianghua's immortal heart remained unmoved. So what if she couldn't find a way to restrain it? As the lead disciple of Shangjing sect and the top sword cultivator among her peers, her one sword break 10,000 method ability had long been perfected. Not to mention that the immortal Du sword in her hand could purify all living things, and it was best at suppressing evil and exorcising devils. During her trip to the Western continent, she didn't deliberately start a massacre, but the number of Western continent devils that died in her hands was not small. Outside the Jade Mansion, the gray smoke gradually shrouded it and soon wrapped it up. The laughter of Faceless One was faintly discernible outside the Jade Mansion, just like a ghost. The gray smoke filled the air, turning Qianghua's brilliant Jade Mansion into the netherworld. However, Qianghua firmly guarded her Jade Mansion. The king pill within the Jade Mansion generated its own magical power, which stood as an equal to the gray smoke. At this point, Qianghua was slightly relieved. Her reaction was a step faster. She promptly sank her primordial spirit from her purple mansion into the Jade Mansion, protected by the king pill. If her primordial spirit was still suspended outside the Jade Mansion, everything would be over once it was confused by the gray smoke. However, seeing the layers of ghostly shadows outside the Jade Mansion, she was inwardly alarmed. The magical ability of this devil was really amazing. She, the dignified Taoist master of the King Pill, was actually easily trapped inside the Jade Mansion, making her unable to exert her magical power. Perhaps this devil was not an ordinary character in the Western continent. She didn't know how Wang Lu brought him back to 9 regions and brought him into the immortal dreamland as a trump card. In terms of rank, perhaps he was even above her. The only weakness was that he looked very weak. Although the gray smoke outside the Jade Mansion blotted out the sky and was endlessly mysterious, it was not very strong. As long as she condensed her magical power and broke through to a certain point, the gray smoke could be dispersed. However, as the magical power dissipated, the gray smoke came back. Upon seeing this, Qianghua immediately operated the King Pill, drawing the flying sword immortal Du back into her body. She saw that inside the Jade Mansion, the blue light on the sacrificial sword platform flashed. The immortal Du turned from real to virtual and flew into the Jade Mansion from outside Qianghua's body. Along with the appearance of the immortal Du, the gray smoke outside the Jade Mansion suddenly retreated about 10 feet, and the aura inside the Jade Mansion also became a lot clearer. This natural exorcism immortal sword was the nemesis of all devils, and now it seemed that the devil of the Western continent would not be an exception. Qionghua's heart became more at ease. Then, she used her primordial spirit to move the sword. The immortal dew sword slightly pointed outside the jade mansion, and the blue light on the tip of the sword condensed into a jade dew, which then flew out of the jade mansion and fell into the place shrouded in gray smoke. In a split second, a green plant broke through the ground, its branches extending upwards with all its might. Very quickly, it grew to a height of more than 100 feet. Dense branches and leaves grew, and then hundreds of flowers bloomed. Petals fluttered in the air, creating a scene of spring in the ghost domain that was shrouded in gray smoke. It was called Sword Immortal Dew, like a jade bottle held by a Zen monk in the dreamtime. A little bit of immortal dew could revive the dead. Although this flying sword was a sharp object, mainly for killing, in Qionghua's hand, it could reverse life and death. Although Faceless One's dead domain was strong, it could not stop the vitality of the immortal dew. Qionghuo continued to use her primordial spirit to control the immortal dew sword. A little bit of sword light, like broken stars, lit up around the jade mansion. Each point of light was lush and flourishing. Before long, Qionghua's jade mansion was surrounded by a sea of life, and the gray smoke, which symbolized death, was forced to retreat step by step. Qionghua's confidence was blocked. Next, she had to be steady and sure, bit by bit, consolidate her own camp, until the gray smoke was completely removed and the victory was established. However, after the initial formation of the sea of flowers, Qionghuo was surprised to find that the first batch of blooming flowers began to wither. When the sea of flowers multiplied to the extreme, death and withering became unstoppable. Although the gray smoke was temporarily excluded from the sea of flowers, it still penetrated into the sea of flowers all the time. And the miracle of life that Qionghuo evoked with the immortal dew still lacked a lasting support. Qionghuo was a bit hesitant. Do I have to use the King Pill True Qi? After entering the King Pill realm, the King Pill in the Jade Mansion was an inexhaustible source of power for the cultivator. However, after all, it was not inexhaustible in the true sense. Rashly using the True Qi. And just at this time, a change occurred. In front of the Jade Mansion, where the gray smoke was the densest, a ray of light like a sharp sword pierced through the gray smoke and fell from the sky, shining on the flower tree that began to wither. With the illumination of the light, in a split second, the flower tree regained its vitality. The next moment, more rays of light pierced through the gray smoke and shone on the flower tree. Each beam of light made the flower tree completely rid of the shadow of death, glowing with unprecedented vitality. With the intensive light, the Jade Mansion seemed to be bathed in a sea of light. Witnessing this scene, Qionghua's heart could not help but be shocked. In a trance, her understanding of life and death deepened a level. In particular, the holy light shone on the immortal dew flower tree, making it full of vitality, not fearing any death and decay process, which contained a very profound mystery. And this was likely to be an important accumulation for Qionghuo to step into the Yuanying stage. However, at the same time, Qionghuo also calmly thought, what exactly was this light? Could it be that someone has come to help? However, in the immortal dreamland, there were enemies everywhere. So who would lend a helping hand to her? Or, at this time, from the boundless light above her head, a soul-stirring, primordial spirit-shaking voice buzzed. Believe in the holy light. Boom. Each of the tens of thousands of beams of light outside the Jade Mansion turned into a sharp sword and directly pierced the Jade Mansion. The originally impregnable defense, under the simultaneous attack of the tens of thousands of sharp swords, violently shook. What a powerful deception. In an instant, Qionghua's heart was shocked. This covert move was really used to the extreme. The gray smoke that previously blotted out the sky was just a cover, while the real killing intent was actually hidden in the moment of life and death. The real lethality of the tens of thousands of sharp swords was not reflected in the magical power. The sharp swords hurt the heart and the soul. The shaking of the Jade Mansion was not caused by external force, but the instability of her own primordial spirit, which began to tremble. Just now, because of her understanding of life and death, she subconsciously had a trace of recognition of the holy light that aroused the miracle of life. Thus, the opponent immediately took advantage of this and forced her to believe in the holy light. Perhaps this was the real killing move of holy light religion, which was really impossible to guard against. However, as the lead disciple of Shengjing's sect, how could her yearning for the immortal path be so easily shaken? How could a mere holy light be compared with the faith of Shengjing's sect? Qionghua's primordial spirit burst into a roar, and her immortal heart bloomed with supreme light, which was even more dazzling than the holy light that fell from the sky. At the same time, Qianghua no longer stubbornly defended herself. Her immortal dew sword and her primordial spirit fused, which then flew out of the Jade Mansion and courageously moved forward. The front was filled with gray smoke, but the immortal dew sword was invincible, piercing through the layers of gray smoke. After an unknown amount of time, perhaps it was just a blink of an eye, or perhaps it was longer, the immortal dew sword rapidly flew through the gray smoke, and finally, the front suddenly opened up. A Western Continent priest in a holy white robe was facing her, and the holy light in his hand was sparkling. The priest's face had no facial features, it was completely blank. However, Qianghua had no intention to pay attention to this person. She was very clear that this was a rare opportunity. Her immortal dew sword went all out, piercing through the Western Continent priest's chest and coming out from his back. However, the sword momentum didn't stop, it flew straight to the boundless horizon. Crash! The invisible barrier was broken. Qianghua opened her eyes and found that she was still standing on the top of the hill. Wang Lu was still at the foot of the hill, and the gray smoke had yet to disperse. The two looked at each other, and everything that happened just now seemed to be an illusion. However, Qianghua was very clear that all of this was not an illusion. Just now, with her extremely brilliant fighting wisdom, she grasped the fleeting opportunity, which allowed her to escape from the gray smoke. Now that she was clear-minded, it was time to harvest the fruits of victory. After seeing the strength of the opponent, Qianghua would not be lenient. The strength of the King Pill stage fully broke out. Her feet touched the ground, and like a lightning, she pounced down the hill, and her immortal dew sword suddenly pierced through Wang Lu's chest. Before the fight, Qianghua had long heard of the prestige of Wang Lu's non-phase sword. For this so-called #1 defensive swordsmanship in the world, even if she was sure that she would win, she had no intention to confront it head-on. As long as she made full use of the speed advantage of the King Pill stage against the Shudon stage, she could succeed before the opponent could launch his non-phase sword defense. Why would she need to attack the enemy's strong point? Even though the immortal dew sword in her hand had pierced through Wang Lu's chest, Qianghua was still not at ease. She released the magical power of the King Pill stage until the immortal dew sword permeated Wang Lu's body. Although the immortal dew sword could revitalize one's vitality, under Qianghua's control, it could also become a deadly poison. No matter how powerful Wang Lu's non-phase method was, once the poison permeated his whole body, he would undoubtedly lose. This fight was finally won. Using the King Pill stage against a Shudon stage, it was a thrilling victory, but in the end, just as she thought of this, a sudden change occurred. Wang Lu, whose whole body was permeated by the immortal dew sword, revealed a strange smile. The next moment, his facial features disappeared without a trace with a bang, revealing a pale and flat face. Chapter 428. Ha ha ha, come and believe in the holy light, heretic lady of 9 regions. The laughter was like a spring thunder, which made Qianghua's tranquil state of mind tremble. The youth who suddenly lost his facial features melted like a burning candle. His flesh and blood melted into the earth. At the same time, the mountains around him began to twist and deform. Gray smoke surged from the horizon and soon enveloped her field of vision. In the place closest to her, a flowering tree rose from the ground and then seemed to wither under the gray smoke. Everything was exactly the same as what she saw in the Jade Mansion. Just now, her primordial spirit fusion flying sword seemed to have no effect at all, and she was still trapped in the cage of the Jade Mansion. In the cage, Faceless One's laughter once again sounded. It was still far and near like a ghost. However, the light that sprinkled down from the sky was even more magnificent. The flowering trees were attracted by the holy light, and each bunch of flowers turned their head to look at the holy light. The holy light nourishes all things, and all things believe in the holy light. This mysterious transformation between life and death constantly exudes a strange charm for cultivators. The more transcendental one's perception is, the more difficult it is to restrain oneself. However, as long as one's yearning for immortality is slightly shaken, one would be attracted by that light. What a powerful illusion technique! Qianghua inwardly marveled. Everything that she saw in front of her was trying to shake her immortal heart. And as long as her immortal heart was broken, she would immediately fall into the hands of the devil. Although this devil from the Western continent has been infinitely weak because of the long-term seal suppression, but before he was sealed, he was probably one of the most powerful cultivators in the Western continent. The use of power and the grasp of people's heart have reached the point of perfection. Although she was the top cultivator among her peers, in front of this Western continent devil, she was like a young child, whose every move was in the palm of his hand. This was a hopeless battle in which it was difficult to talk about winning. However, the more it was like this, the calmer Xueqi became. She took a deep breath and then operated her primordial spirit to seal off her 5 senses. The opponent's illusion technique was too strong. Under the effect of the illusion, she could not distinguish whether the world around her was real or fake. In this case, her 5 senses would only become a drag. However, as a cultivator of the King Pill sect, she had a perception that went beyond her 5 senses and would never be confused. His line of sight returned to his jade mansion. The diamond-like dazzling jade immortal heart was still stubbornly releasing its own light in the predicament wrapped in holy light, symbolizing Xueqi's unyielding persistence. Immediately after, the young girl began to shake her jade mansion. The King Pill and her primordial spirit slowly shifted and fused with the jade immortal heart. With the gradual formation of the Trinity, the illusion outside the jade mansion began to collapse. Only the most determined and tenacious immortal heart could accommodate the primordial spirit and the King Pill, and only the highest grade of the King Pill could circulate independently in the immortal heart without any stagnation. Only the purest primordial spirit could be freely contained in the immortal heart without being contaminated. Xueqi's method, Tao, and heart had reached an unprecedented high degree of harmony. All the disturbances brought by her body were eliminated, and the distracting thoughts in her primordial spirit also disappeared without a trace. In Xueqi's heart, there was only the tireless pursuit of the immortal path. Therefore, no matter how many means Faceless One used, it was still difficult for him to confuse Xueqi. The illusion outside the Jade Mansion was like a tree without roots, gradually withering. Xueqi retreated in order to advance, and defended in order to attack. Using the Trinity method, she achieved an unprecedented self-purification. As the Jade Immortal Heart became more and more dazzling, Faceless One's laughter gradually faded. Puff! In the gray smoke, a young man in red and white robe, as if he was hit by a heavy blow, involuntarily spurted out a mouthful of blood. In the filthy blood, there were sparkling diamond-like rays of light. It was just that, such a beautiful thing for the person who vomited blood, was actually a deadly poison. After vomiting blood, Wang Lu suddenly issued a disdainful sneer. Faceless One, are you King good or not? A dignified quasi-sage can't even deal with a King Pill girl. You're not deliberately letting her win, are you? As soon as his voice fell, the expression on his face changed, becoming stiff and void. His mouth then said, "These words are really chilling." She even used the Trinity method. The Jade Immortal Heart can even be directly reflected in the other party's immortal heart, like a highly toxic attack. Your non-phase sword body can't stop it. What else can I do? Even if I am a true sage, with your tiny amount of magical power, I can't play any more tricks. The nature is originally incompatible, and the total amount is also small. By the way, are you interested in believing in the holy light? If you are willing to convert to the holy light, transform your magical power and primordial spirit into the seed of the holy light, I might be able to do something with it. A vigilant look appeared on Wang Lu's face. If I didn't know that you've been trained by my master to be a loyal dog, I would have turned you into ashes with this suggestion. Then his expression became indifferent again, but his voice was still full of rhythmic changes, which seemed vivid and colorful. That's not appropriate. I have not been trained by anyone, but rather awakened from the bottom of my heart, realizing my true mission. And for my mission, I can put down any so-called hatred. Not to mention that I am the most loyal executor of Holy Light religion, so I have no personal hatred to speak of. Your so-called mission is to serve my master? Yes, my existence, my everything is to carry out her will. You are her disciple, so she handed me over to you so that I can help you at the critical time. So, at this moment, I will do my best to help you. I really want to know what my master did to you in the past. Wang Lu sincerely sighed with emotion. She showed me the truth. Oh? Is her truth a D cup? Wang Lu, although I understand the intimate relationship between you and her, in front of me, you'd better not be disrespectful to her. Otherwise, I will let you have a deep taste of the price of blasphemy. Forget it. I have been her disciple for many years, and I have touched her more than once. I really hate you. But you still have to help me. I want you to quickly take down Qianghua. Otherwise, when she comes back to her senses and kills me, you who are in the possession state will also die, and your plan to be loyal to the queen will be over. I now think that it might be better for her to get rid of you and let her change her disciple. Well, now that Qianghua is impervious to evil, even a brilliant illusion would be difficult to shake her. Therefore, we must change the direction and give up the initial plan of humiliating her. Well, although it's a pity, the reality is more important. So let's change to the next plan, delay the time, and strive to delay the other side. I agree. Although the Trinity is highly pure, its dullness to foreign objects can also bring fatal damage. Faceless Face borrowed Wang Lu's mouth to softly explain, and then she raised her right hand high. A river of holy light flowed out from the palm of her hand, like a gorgeous ribbon. It was just that. The heresy of the ribbon was extremely enlarged, turning into a billowing river. The river flowed upstream from the foot of the mountain, rushing all the way to the top of the mountain, wrapping the jasper flower on the summit. The river of holy light was mighty, rushing forward, but wherever the river passed, the movement of all things became extremely slow. This river was actually created by Faceless One with a very brilliant skill. He used the holy light to simulate the river of time, manipulating time in a small range. Qianghua's self-purification made her impervious to evil, but at the same time, she was also highly self-sealed. In this state, although it was difficult to hurt her, it could trap her in a special way. Well, with the washing of the river of history, she can't do anything for at least 3 days. But after 3 days, after 3 days, no matter what reaction the eternal tree has, it doesn't matter. Wang Lu sneered, frowned, and then said to himself, next, I have to solve my own problem. Faceless, come and give me a hand. In this mysterious and subtle realm, Qianghua didn't know how much time had passed. The high degree of integration of King Pill, Primordial Spirit, and Immortal Heart was an immortal level method inherited by Shengjing sect from before the Age of Chaos. For thousands of years, only a few people could cultivate it, and all of them were earth-shattering almighty. Today, the immortal path had declined, and Shengjing sect was revered as the leader of the Wanxian League. In the sect, only Qianghua could use this method. In the state of integration, Qianghua was impervious to all methods. At the same time, because of the integration of the 3 forces, each and every move of hers had great power. Unfortunately, Qianghua hadn't been cultivating this method for long, so the 3 realms were not yet perfect. Therefore, she could only defend but not attack, and it was difficult for her to launch an attack. Otherwise, taking advantage of the disintegration of the illusion and triggering the counterattack from the opposite party, she would then launch a powerful sword strike in the state of integration. Even if Wang Lu's non-phase sword was twice as strong, he would still be defeated without a doubt. However, now that Qianghua had gradually regained the initiative, when the state of integration was over, she still had the absolute advantage. She had already touched the door of the opposite party's illusion, so she would not be confused for the second time. Without the illusion, what could a shoot-on-stage lead disciple of Spirit Sword sect and a Western continent devil who was struggling at death's door do? However, suddenly, Qianghua's immortal heart trembled, and the state of integration of the 3 nearly disintegrated. Her intuition told her that a huge crisis was about to come, and the sudden burst of warning even shook her immortal heart. What kind of crisis in this world could seriously threaten her? Even the devil of the Western continent just now couldn't do it. Could it be? Impossible. It shouldn't be possible? Thinking to this, Qianghua simply began to lift the state of integration and began to unseal her 5 senses. When she opened her eyes, the blood-red setting sun surprised her. In her impression, the fight with the Western continent devil would last for at most an hour, and it was not even noon when the fight started, so how could it be in the evening now? However, before she could think about it, the terrifying magical power fluctuation from afar attracted all her attention. Behind the countless mountains, a big tree that blotted out the sky began to sway, causing the whole world to sway with it. Countless roots twisted together, forming a pair of strong and powerful legs that rose from the ground. Then it crashed down, and the waves of water in the lower reaches of Harmony River surged up to the sky. The violent shock seemed to turn the world upside down, and the shock waves were transmitted from thousands of miles away, making people unable to stand steadily. At the same time, rain fell from the sky, which was the water of Harmony River that was stirred up to the sky. When the eternal tree moved, it already had such power. However, why did this ancient silent tree suddenly move? At this time, Two tender and angry voices suddenly resounded through the world along with the stretching of the branches and leaves of the eternal tree. Jinling, die! We want to avenge Uncle Zai. Upon hearing these words, Wang Lu finally could not help but laugh. Senior brother Zai, I'm really sorry. The reason why I forced you with my words was not to force those two children to die, but to force you to die, and as a result, you really died, ha ha ha. Chapter 429. Wang Lu had never really conspired to take the lives of the two children. The blood sacrifice of one person to create the eternal tree was, from the very beginning, a conspiracy. A conspiracy to force Zhan Zai to his death. Zhan Zai's eternal tree strategy was not wrong. The spell he deduced with his supreme wisdom could indeed connect the sacred leaf to the eternal tree, which could exert an unprecedented terrifying power in this world. Unfortunately, Shaman and a Yi went to the underworld together, completely ruining his entire plan. Without the powerful sacred leaf shaman, the young successor was far from enough to support the spell. Thus, the only way seemed to be what Wang Lu said, the blood sacrifice of one person to create the other. However, just as Wang Lu said the plan, he was angrily interrupted by Zhan Zai. But on the other hand, if Wang Lu didn't say the plan at that time, what would happen? With Zhan Zai's IQ, could he really not think of this method? As for whether this method would be implemented or not, and whether it was possible for him to harden his heart and hurt the two children. In fact, he had to carefully consider it. The two children were entrusted to him by Shaman, which was of great significance. However, from another point of view, who did Shaman and these two children belong to? Was it with Zhan Zai? Seeing these two children who inherited the blood of a Yi, would Zhan Zai smile from ear to ear and regard them as his own? Even if Zhan Zai was slow in emotion, would he really be willing to accept these two big plates? Zhan Zai was not an evil person, but he was also not a saint. He would not easily be moved by the love between a man and a woman. Previously, when he was attracted by Lu Li, it could not be considered as being moved by his true love. However, with Zhan Zai's character, once he was moved by his true love, he would often do extreme things. For him, at the beginning it was just a game and the important thing was the result. During this period, when he got along with Shaman, this forest fairy made him quietly moved, and he began to try to enjoy the game process. However, when he had high hopes for Shaman, Shaman betrayed his trust. For Zhan Zai, Shaman could be said to have stabbed him in the back. However, for a cultivator of 10,000 arts sect who secretly had feelings for her, the meaning of this injury could only be explained by the countless painful lessons in history. Unfortunately, although Shaman was intelligent all her life, at the last moment of her life, she was confused and ignorant of what she had done. Entrust the two children to Zhan Zai? When Wang Lu found out about this, he immediately sentenced the two children to death. Perhaps Zhan Zai would not act immediately, but the existence of the two children was an eyesore. Zhan Zai would eventually understand that the 5 blood spirits crown was the only thing that mattered to him, and if he wanted to obtain the blood spirit crown, the sacrifice of the two children was essential. Of course, Zhan Zai was not a deranged person, but what if the two children sought death on their own, and their reasons for seeking death were very sufficient? Wang Lu was willing to bet 10 million spirit stones that Zhan Zai would definitely go with the flow and sacrifice the two children in exchange for the 5 blood spirits crown. This was the difference between Zhan Zai and Zhou Mumu. In order to have a tacit understanding with a Yi, in order to fulfill a poignant love, Zhou Mumu did not hesitate to sacrifice herself. However, Zhan Zai was different. The teachings of his sect and his innate temperament determined that he would never be stuck in a quagmire forever. If Shaman was still alive, she might be able to firmly tie Zhan Zai down, but she was already dead. The only factor that could limit Zhan Zai's madness had disappeared. For Wang Lu, the life and death of the two children were not important. He would not deliberately push them into the abyss, but he also would not waste precious time to save their lives. For Wang Lu, the important thing was Zhan Zai's eternal tree strategy. It was one of the most important weapons against Qianghua, but at the same time, it was also a threat that made Wang Lu deeply apprehensive. Once the eternal tree fell into Zhan Zai's hands, he could really sweep across this world and no one could be his opponent. Therefore, Wang Lu had to get rid of Zhan Zai, and at the same time, he had to keep the eternal tree. Therefore, a targeted plan came into being. The plan to sacrifice the two children, Zhan Zai would eventually come up with it. However, if this matter was put forward by Wang Lu first, the nature of it would be completely different. Given the relationship between the two of them, Zhang Zai would only subconsciously resist this matter, and when he first heard about it, he would be furious. Next, Wang Lu talked about the plan that should have been deduced by Zhang Zai on his own. Not only was it not a hint, but it also completely strangled the germination in Zhang Zai's heart. Especially when the two children came at the right time to ask for a fight, Zhang Zai was completely suppressed by Wang Lu and could not even speak. However, going too far was as bad as not going far enough. Suppressing Zhang Zai so miserably would only make the seed of rebellion grow crazily. Similarly, the timely appearance of the two children was like a stroke of genius, which directly pulled them back from the abyss of death. After making such a scene in front of Wang Lu, no matter what, Zhang Zai would not just watch them die. On the contrary, if he could break Wang Lu's plan, Zhang Zai would regard it as a victory instead. However, how could he protect the two children and make Wang Lu's vicious plan fail? This was the problem left to Zhang Zai, and there was indeed another way to launch the eternal tree without the blood sacrifice. That was, Zhang Zai himself played the role of the sacred leaf. As for whether his wood spirit body could overstep its boundaries and play the role of the master. With the 10,000 methods comprehension, as long as he was willing to pay the price, there was nothing that could not be done. However, using the 10,000 methods comprehension to simulate the sacred leaf was, after all, a heaven-defying act. Especially when the target was the eternal tree, such a divine object. Zhang Zai was bound to pay a heavy price, and it was very likely that he would fall on the spot. In Xuan Xian's dreamland, he still had life-saving props, but the fate of being expelled was inevitable. From a rational point of view, Zhang Zai simply could not accept this price. He was not here to do volunteer work. To launch the eternal tree to defeat Golden City and then let Wang Lu enjoy the fruits of his labor, why should he? Now the answer was revealed. Based on the previous words of Wang Lu, he was forced to die. Wang Lu didn't tell anyone about this trick, nor did he intend to share it with anyone. In fact, after Zhang Zai was misled by Wang Lu, until he used the 10,000 methods comprehension to simulate the existence of the sacred leaf to communicate with the eternal tree, his magical power was exhausted, his primordial spirit atrophied, and he was forcibly expelled from the immortal dreamland. He didn't realize that his wisdom was actually deceived and he had already gone astray. Of course, perhaps he had already realized it, but he didn't care. When he finally left the stage, Zhang Zai wore a triumphant smile. Wang Lu, in the end, I have not become a chess piece on your chessboard, nor have I lost my humanity. The most important thing is, I have gotten what I want in this trial, and the harvest will not lose to any of you. You can have the 5 blood spirits crown. I hope that your utilitarianism can bless you to always move forward. When Zhang Zai left the stage, perhaps no one in this world could understand the inside story, except for one person. Oh, what a beautiful trick! The smile on Wang Lu's face suddenly turned cold, but his tone was quite playful. It's very much like my style when I preached in Holy Light religion. Wang Lu clicked his tongue and said, originally, I was quite proud of something, but because of your comment, it immediately fell. Faceless One said, although I hate you, I recognize your ability. There are only 2 things in this world that are most important. One is hard power, and the other is the ability to play with people's hearts. It seems that you have mastered the latter ability. Wang Lu disapprovingly sneered. What kind of skill is there in playing with an otaku? When one day my master can find her moral integrity, that would be a great achievement. But in any case, the timely appearance of the eternal tree has finally solved the problem. Let's see how senior sister Xueqi deals with it. This eternal tree has infinite energy. If it is properly controlled, it can be comparable to the holy ones of the Western continent. Unfortunately, no one in this world can have this cultivation base. Faceless One lightly commented, especially for 2 young children to control the eternal tree, I'm afraid it would be difficult to preserve its power. But it's more than enough to crush a king pill cultivator. I'm really looking forward to it. Senior sister Xueqi, how are you going to break my game? The same question also emerged in the mind of Xueqi. After awakening his 5 senses and opening his eyes, he saw a towering divine tree rising from the ground in the truest sense of the word. The hostility that assaulted his face was like a tidal wave, causing his heart to tremble. Such a divine thing had far exceeded the scope of this world. This ring limited the cultivation base of a cultivator to the king pill level. She relied on the secret method of Shangjing sect to quickly restore her king pill level after entering this world, which allowed her to occupy the absolute advantage. However, this eternal tree's level was far beyond Yuanying stage. If it was in perfect condition, let alone Qianghua, even the elders of Shangjing sect might not be able to match it. Even if it was only the two children who controlled the eternal tree, it would be difficult for them to display even 1/10 of its power. Even if she had the ability to move mountains and fill the sea, how could she deal with the eternal tree, which was much bigger than any mountain or river in this world? So, how could she break this barrier? The Trinity secret method was indeed powerful, but it was not enough for her to contend against the eternal tree. Moreover, the effectiveness of the secret method was limited and could not be maintained for a long time. In this state, although her power was raised to the peak and all kinds of evil could not invade her, the king pill also lost its endless good fortune ability, and there was a possibility that her magical power would dry up. If even this secret method could not work, then there was only the last choice. Qianghua's temperament was decisive. After thinking about this, she made a decision. The girl took a deep breath and placed the immortal dew sword horizontally in front of her chest. Her right hand held the hilt while her left hand gently stroked the sword. At the same time, inside her jade mansion, on the sacrificial sword platform, a blue flying sword slowly floated up, echoing with the sword outside. Then, a clear spring flowed down from the sacrificial sword platform, and the source of the spring was a freehand landscape painting. This painting in the jade mansion originally seemed to be just an ornament, but at this time, from the mountains and rivers in the painting, a clear spring flowed out and washed the immortal dew sword. The immortal dew was pure and free of dirt, so why would it need to be washed? However, under the flow of the clear spring, the two words immortal dew on the sword were washed away little by little. Then, two swift and fierce handwriting emerged. Kill immortal. Chapter 430. When the two words immortal dew turned into kill immortal, it was as if an invisible force was suddenly released. Between heaven and earth, the spiritual energy went berserk, and the wind and clouds changed. The whistling wind scuttled between the mountains, the rolling dark clouds gathered and dispersed from the horizon, and the thunder snakes rolled in the clouds. Qianghua quietly wielded the kill immortal sword. Her heart was like an ancient well without any ripples, without sorrow or joy. The sword chi of the kill immortal sword wrapped around her body, making it impossible for any external force to invade her, let alone disturb her state of mind. Kill immortal sword was one of the most famous immortal swords in the 9 regions before the Age of Chaos. It was a veritable immortal treasure, and even the immortals of the upper realm could not face it head-on. It was just that with the passage of time, the immortal chi of the kill immortal sword had long dissipated, leaving only a sword embryo, which was like a dried-up corpse, and its magical power was completely lost. Thousands of years ago, the Shangjing sect found this sword by chance, but they could not use it freely. Qianghua obtained the kill immortal sword from the hands of her sect elder, and she kept it close to her body, refining it day and night. Finally, when she broke through the king pill, she integrated the kill immortal sword into the sacrificial altar in her jade mansion, using her infinite potential to help it restore its vitality, turning it into the basic form of immortal dew. Although it was far from its peak, it was still a valuable spiritual treasure. At this time, Qianghua once again picked up the edge of the kill immortal sword. In her current stage, she could not freely use the power of the kill immortal sword. She could only release the sword momentum, which was a taboo of a sword cultivator. The sword should be light and agile. How could it be reduced to a rough chopping knife? However, at this moment, Qianghua really did not need any precise control. Because the target was too big, even if she wanted to miss, it would be very difficult, wouldn't it? With a chuckle, Qianghua lifted the last bit of restraint. The landscape painting in the jade mansion was once again attached to the wall, but the meaning of the landscape had disappeared. The blue flying sword was still on the sacrificial altar. It was just that, the sacrificial altar, which was originally enough to carry the flying sword, was now slightly shaking, unable to bear the burden. Because the immortal dew had finally turned into the kill immortal sword, the agile flying sword seemed to hide a whole world, a world of raging waves. This immortal slaughtering sword was her last trump card in this world. It did not matter if one was the descendant of the Emperor of War, invincible in battle, the 10,000 arts mastery, the thunder battle physique, or even the supreme god, or the Vajra indestructible. Under the immortal slaying sword, all of them were not worth mentioning. She had cultivated for 20 years, and this immortal culling sword had accompanied her for 20 years. This was the first time it had revealed its edge. Even when she achieved the king pill, her mana was perfected, and her mind was at its most unrestrained. She had never thought of releasing the immortal slaying sword. Because Qianghua knew very well that this long wait was all for the moment of harvest. Now, it was time to reap the harvest. Qianghua washed away the immortal dew and washed away the immortal slaying. The process was only a short moment, but it also seemed extremely long. When the kill immortal sword appeared, the time in this world seemed to have stagnated. The eternal tree had just taken a step in the distance, crossing more than 10 mountains. Its thick legs made of roots had not yet landed, but it made people feel that it could no longer lift the earth. Because the immortal culling sword had attacked. Qianghua's movements were very elegant and light. The famous immortal sword was like a bunch of willow twigs, dancing along with the girl's forearm, drawing a casual arc. This was not because Qianghua was being lenient, but, with her current cultivation base, this was the limit of what she could do. The kill immortal sword seemed light, and at this time, there were still more than 10 seals left behind by Hichu Daoren. However, for a cultivator of the king pill, it was still too heavy. Qianghua felt like she was holding the whole world in her hands, and even if she tried her best, she could only gently wave it. Because it was too difficult to control the immortal sword, the direction of the wave was even a bit out of place. Although the eternal tree was a big target because it was still far away, the sword light of the flying sword seemed to be a bit off and did not affect the eternal tree. For Fairy Qianghua, this was an almost unimaginable mistake. However, people soon realized that it had nothing to do with a mistake. As the kill immortal sword swept across, a clear crack was left in the air. The crack was narrow and surged with a swaying blood-colored light. It looked like a crack had been cut in space. However, the next moment, the red light from the crack gushed out. Like a dam bursting, it instantly submerged the hilltop in front of Qianghua. Moreover, it rapidly expanded, and soon, it continued to spread along the mountains and rivers. Wherever the red light passed, not even a blade of grass grew, and the vitality was cut off. Moreover, every bit of death aura made the red light stronger, and soon, it spread to a jaw-dropping situation. That's right, the target was so big that even if she could not control the kill immortal sword, so what? Because Qianghua's goal was the whole world. The kill immortal sword was an ancient immortal sword, and its killing power and magical ability were far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Even though it was separated from the heavy seals of Hichu Daoren, in the hands of Qianghua, it still shone with incredible power. Using the King Pill stage combined with the 3-in-1 secret method, she poured the authoritative divine power of the Master of Golden City, the power of Metal Spirit and Water Spirit into the kill immortal sword as a sacrificial offering in the Temple of Massacre. And the ancient killing object summoned by the kill immortal sword was enough to threaten this small world. Because this was, after all, not a complete world. It was just an immortal dreamland formed by the group of immortal tombs that connected the feng shui line of 9 regions. Although Qianghua could not break the world with one sword, she could break the dream with one sword. The red light gushed out from the crack and greedily spread to every corner of the world, setting off a monstrous killing. And each killing would make the red light more powerful, like the spread of a plague, unstoppable. If this was an independent and perfect world, facing this kind of crisis of extinction, there would naturally be a vision from the sky to resolve the crisis. For example, the heavenly tribulation in 9 regions was a means to balance the world. However, this immortal dreamland was still one step away from reality, so it was unable to quell the crisis. It could only let the red light spread and continue to disintegrate the world with killing. As for the eternal tree, at the moment when the red light lit up, when the whole world was placed under the kill immortal sword by Qianghua, the eternal tree was no longer in her eyes. At the same time, when the kill immortal sword disintegrated the world, the eternal tree did not do anything. Previously, it lifted its foot high, as if to flatten all the enemies that blocked its way. However, that foot never fell. It just hung there for a long time. No matter how the 2 angry children urged it, the eternal tree refused to move even half a step. Because the eternal tree had no time to take care of itself. In a small world where the most powerful being was only on the level of King Pill, a divine tree that was so powerful that it was close to a supreme of unity stage was itself extremely unreasonable. Behind this power, there must be a weakness. And Qianghua happened to understand this weakness. The eternal tree was the foundation of this world. Its strength came from the supply of the whole world. Thus, when the world encountered a crisis, it would also bear the brunt of the feedback. This strike to break the world happened to be a fatal blow for the eternal tree. Countless charred scars suddenly appeared on the thick tree trunk. The coarse bark fell off one by one, and the biggest pieces were as big as small mountains. When they fell to the ground, the earth shook and the mountains shook. Looking up, the crown of the eternal tree, which once blotted out the sky and was hidden above the clouds, began to shrink rapidly. The withered leaves poured down like a torrential rain, and the thin branches at the end of the crown quickly scorched until they turned into gray powder that dissipated with the wind. In the eternal tree, the hundreds of millions of creatures felt their hearts tremble at the same time, which was followed by endless panic. They had lived in the eternal tree for generations and built their own city in the vast trunk of the eternal tree. The eternal tree also sheltered them from the wind and rain, and provided them with rich resources. Even when the sacred leaf urged the divine tree to rise from the ground, the city in the tree remained motionless. This was the protection of the divine tree. But now, people suddenly found that the protection of the divine tree had disappeared. Above their heads was the torrential rain of withered leaves, and their ears were blown by the strong wind at the high altitude, which made their skin and flesh hurt. Their feet trembled faintly and their footing became unstable. The next moment, the sky fell and the earth shook. On the eternal tree, a thick branch broke from the middle, and at the same time, a city also broke from the center. Half of the city that leaned towards the treetop fell with the branch, and thousands of creatures fell into the abyss of death in shock and fear. Before they landed, a red wave rose and swallowed the half of the branch. The cries of thousands of creatures stopped abruptly, leaving behind a deeper fear that spread in this world. This world was finished. It was hard to imagine that a world with hundreds of millions of creatures was killed by Xueqi's sword. However, from another point of view, in the mortal world, a strong man could also die from a small wound infection. For this imperfect world, the kill immortal sword was not only an infection, but also a highly toxic poison. The red wave surged, and the energy of the slaughter seemed to be loose, but it actually contained spirituality. After expanding to an uncontrollable extent, it specifically targeted the strong of this world and attacked as a group. Xiang Liang and his sovereign, the king of flaming flames, disappeared in the red wave. After the battle with Xueqi, Xiang Liang was already at a low point. The king of flaming flames was irritable and reckless, and the abuse of blood marks could no longer heal him. Therefore, in the face of Xueqi's world-breaking attack, Xiang Liang silently chose to leave after doing everything he could. In addition, Harmony River was also the focus of the red wave. Chapter 431. King Pill. Seeing Wang Lu, Xueqi looked very surprised. It was not surprising that Wang Lu could survive the kill immortal sword. Wang Lu's survivability was above any cultivator of the same level. However, even according to the most optimistic expectation, Wang Lu should have been seriously injured and on the verge of death after the kill immortal sword's world-breaking attack. But now, not only was he unscathed, he even advanced to the King Pill and stood on the same line as her. Was it possible to make a breakthrough in the middle of a battle? In theory, it was impossible. After the foundation stage, every breakthrough meant a huge change from the body to the primordial spirit, and it would take a long time to adapt to this change. Especially when it came to the King Pill, if one's qualification was slightly poor, they would have to adjust their breathing for several months in advance, and with the help of array pills, they would have to go through the deconstruction of the Jade Mansion, the condensation of the primordial spirit, and many other hurdles before they could finally achieve the King Pill. The process might take up to a month, and the shortest would be 4 or 5 days. During this period, there must be no external interference, otherwise, it would all be in vain. Not to mention reaching the foundation establishment stage before entering the immortal dreamland. Even if one was in the Jindan stage before entering the immortal dreamland, after being suppressed to the peak Shudan stage by the secret method, it would be extremely difficult to return to the Jindan stage. Otherwise, she would not be the only one in the King Pill realm in this round. In theory, it was impossible for Wang Lu to jump from the Shudan stage to the King Pill realm in a short period of time. However, theory was theory. Wang Lu never followed common sense. Before entering this round, Xueqi had expected that she might encounter such a situation. Therefore, she was fully prepared. In the face of the newly advanced King Pill realm Wang Lu, whose magical power was like a surging sea, Xueqi decisively made her own decision. I give up. Wang Lu was slightly surprised, but his smile did not diminish. However, he could not suppress his confusion. Senior Sister Xueqi, are you teasing me? Xueqi calmly said, "You and I are both in the lower-grade king pill realm. Our aptitudes are similar, and our cultivation techniques are equally good. Our strengths should be about the same. Comparatively speaking, my magic weapon is stronger, but I can't use it now. After using the immortal slaying sword, my king pill's source is damaged, and it's difficult for my magic power to recover. I'm only at half of my peak. Whether it's a protracted battle or an instantaneous explosion, I'm no longer as good as you. If I continue to fight, I'll definitely lose, so I gave up." Xueqi also said, "This world has already been extinguished by the kill immortal sword, but I can feel that the power of the 5 spirits still exists, and the blood spirit temple has not disappeared. Therefore, after I leave, you can still be the victor and obtain the 5 blood spirit crown. In this way, everyone will be happy, and you and I will not have to waste time in a meaningless fight. Even if you're the new king pill and want to prove that you're above me, it doesn't make sense for you to win against me in my incomplete state. Therefore, it's better to leave the outcome for later. Judging from the situation in this trial, there are still many opportunities for us to meet in the future. I'm also looking forward to our next meeting." With that, Xueqi solemnly asked, "Junior brother Wang Lu, what do you think?" Wang Lu sighed. "Senior sister Xueqi, I've always respected you, the lead disciple of Shangjing sect. Among the lead disciples of the 5 uniques, I always thought that only you can really compete with me. For a long time in the future, you will be my important opponent." Listening to Wang Lu's words, Xueqi was somewhat surprised. However, Wang Lu immediately changed the topic. "However, respect is mutual. Since you insist on treating me like a fool, I can only treat you in the same way." With that, Wang Lu's expression changed again, and his eyebrows suddenly became arrogant. "Obediently cut off one of your arms, kneel down and apologize, then I'll let you go." Upon hearing this, Xueqi was stunned. "This," Wang Lu frowned. "Don't you understand? This is a small vernacular language designed for people like you who don't like to use your brain. Listening to it, you should feel intimate, like it's your mother tongue." The sarcasm in his words was not concealed, and at the same time, a fierce murderous aura pierced forward like a sharp sword. Xueqi sensed the murderous intent, and the king pill in her jade mansion suddenly trembled. She frowned and finally confirmed, "Junior brother Wang Lu, do you really want to have this kind of senseless fight with me?" "Senseless fight? Ha, that's not what you said when you exterminated hundreds of millions of creatures with your sword." Xueqi slightly understood. "So this is what you're obsessed with. Junior brother, you don't know this, but this world is not as simple as you think. Words are useless." Wang Lu roared, which caused the surrounding area to tremble. Xueqi's complexion changed, because she found out that the place where she was located was unexpectedly sealed off. The space around her was suppressed by a powerful and heavy energy, like stagnant water, unable to move even the slightest bit. Non-phase sword defense? Wang Lu's 3-feet sword defense was well known for a long time. It could be called as an invincible barrier in the same stage. Even a powerhouse who was a stage higher than him might not be able to break it easily. However, when Wang Lu advanced to the King Pill realm, this non-phase sword defense impressively went a step further, reaching a more mysterious state. If it was a normal time, Xueqi might be interested in exploring the mystery, but at this time, her heart sank. The space was suppressed by the non-phase sword chi, which rendered the prop she used to get out of this world ineffective. It was tantamount to her being trapped here. She had to fight with Wang Lu to determine the winner and loser, summon the 5 spirits into one, and then summon the 5 blood spirit crown. And right now, she really didn't want to face the imposing Wang Lu. However, the newly advanced King Pill was actually able to suppress the space within 100 feet with his sword chi. It was probably because the kill immortal sword had swept through this world, causing the space to become deathly still. She reaped what she sowed. However, at this point it was useless to say more. Wang Lu had already made his move, and the sword intent was decisive. Xueqi had no choice. 2 emerald green jade daggers jumped out from the sacrificial altar, and the sword body was projected in the palm of the girl's hand. The sword chi was dense and agile. It was a pair of rare treasured swords. Coming from Shangjing sect, Xueqi's magical treasures were enough to overwhelm others. In addition to the most important kill immortal sword, she had as many spare weapons as she wanted. Each of them was not low in rank, and each of them had magical abilities. If one really thought that Xueqi's strength would be greatly reduced after losing her main weapon, then that would be a big mistake. Xueqi crossed the pair of swords in front of her chest and cautiously observed Wang Lu. The newly advanced King Pill was an earth-shaking change for any cultivator. Wang Lu was already powerful, but at this time, it was even more unfathomable. However, non-phase method had always been good at defense and bad at offense, so she didn't have to be in a hurry. Just as she thought of this, a golden light suddenly flashed in front of her. Wang Lu unexpectedly thrust his sword forward with an indomitable sword momentum. Feeling the sharp offensive of this sword, Xueqi was startled. Could it be that the big heart demon oath that troubled Wang Lu had been lifted along with the achievement of the King Pill? Thus, she slightly raised the two swords in her hands, ready to parry. The next moment, the three swords collided. Xueqi felt an incredible force coming from her hands. The two emerald green jade daggers could no longer be held stably and flew out of her hands. Even her jade mansion and King Pill fiercely trembled. Nameless sword, Xueqi softly said to herself, and then looked at the sword of Mount Kuan that was suspended in front of her. The girl smiled. Congratulations, you win. The duel between the two lead disciples was decided in just one round. Under Wang Lu's sword, Xueqi, who was in poor condition, almost had no resistance. Are you satisfied? Xueqi lightly said. The lead disciple of Spirit Sword Sect defeated the lead disciple of Shangjing Sect. After this round is over, you can step on me to further your reputation. Is this what you want? Wang Lu sneered. Xueqi then said in short, can I go now? After a while, seeing that Wang Lu didn't have the intention to move the sword of Mount Kuan away, and the space around her was still firmly locked, Xueqi asked, or, are you going to kill me here? Wang Lu laughed again. Kill the lead disciple of Shangjing Sect? And then cause an uproar. And from then on, the 9 regions will no longer be peaceful? With that, Wang Lu put down the sword in his hand. Xueqi nodded. Yes, that's why I said that this fight is actually meaningless. I have already admitted defeat. With that, Xueqi was ready to leave, but she found that the space was still locked. Is there anything else? Of course there is. Wang Lu sneered. Originally, I was going to explain it to you in detail, but in view of your level of intelligence, I'd better change it to a more direct way. As soon as his voice fell, a strong and powerful punch solidly hit Xueqi's face. This punch came so fast that it seemed to be even faster than the sword light. Xueqi was caught off guard and was sent flying backward. Only after crashing into 2 mountain peaks did she stop. However, before she could stand up, she saw that Wang Lu was already standing in front of her. Boom! The second punch followed closely, sinking her deep into the mountain rocks and tens of meters deep into the ground. Xueqi only felt that her face was hot, and then blood flowed out. However, the pain in her body was not worth mentioning. What really made her angry was the humiliation in her heart. Wang Lu, don't get me wrong, I'm not interested in humiliating you at the moment. In the deep pit, Wang Lu stepped on Xueqi's feet so that she could not get up, and then lightly said, I hit you because of my respect for you in the past. You're a bit possessed now, so I have to wake you up a bit. Xueqi sneered. Possessed? Are you still clinging to my kill immortal sword? I didn't know that the lead disciple of Spirit Sword Sect has such a benevolent mind. It's just a mere immortal dreamland. Moreover, do you know what the background of this ring is? Wang Lu said, I didn't know at first, but now, even if senior brother Xiangliang is slow, I'm afraid he can also see it. With that, Wang Lu raised his head and looked up along the hole that was created by his heavy punch. Outside the hole, the blood-colored sky seemed as if it could collapse at any time. Looking from the hole, it looked like an abyss. After the world-breaking blow of the Kill Immortal Sword, hundreds of millions of creatures in this world died. There were only a few survivors. Some of them were sheltered by Wang Lu's non-phase sword defense during the Great Apocalypse, and some of them were fish that escaped the net. However, no matter which creature it was, they all had very obvious characteristics. It was a characteristic that any cultivator of 9 regions with some experience would never forget. And these characteristics had never appeared before. The Great Apocalypse of the Kill Immortal Sword not only annihilated the life force, but also broke the huge confusion spell of this world, so that many things showed their original appearance. Before this, among the several lead disciples who entered this level, perhaps only Xueqi had accidentally seen the truth. While thinking, Wang Lu sighed and revealed the answer. This is the demon world, right? Chapter 432. Clatter. Clatter. While Wang Lu and Qianghua were talking, the sound of gravel rolling came from the entrance of the cave, and a tall, heavily armored woman slowly walked in. Through the glimmer of light from the entrance of the cave, one could vaguely see the clothes of the person. The texture of the armor showed her identity as the master of the Grey Mountain, Lan. However, when the woman approached, one could see that her skin was red. Her long hair was like blood. Her full lips had two sharp teeth protruding out, and behind her was a long tail that was slowly swaying. No matter how one looked at her, she was not that persistent and slow human girl. She was clearly the natural disaster that once wreaked havoc in the 9 regions, the demon race. According to the rumor, the demon race was tyrannical in nature and regarded the creatures of the 9 regions as their irreconcilable enemy. During the Great War of Immortals and Demons, the people of the 9 regions were plunged into misery and suffering. Nearly half of the cultivators who participated in the war were killed, and a large number of sects that had just recovered from the Age of Chaos were wiped out. After that, for thousands of years, although the demon race as a whole was silent, there were still some fish that slipped through the net and crossed the boundary of space to come to the 9 regions, causing various crises. If there was any common enemy in the 9 regions for thousands of years, it was none other than the demon race. Even the predecessor of the Wanxian League was established to fight against the demon race. For the cultivators of the Wanxian League, no matter how big the hatred between them was, if they saw the demon race, they must join forces to fight against them. This was the iron rule. However, when Lan approached, Wang Lu just looked back and smiled at her, without showing any hostility. Seeing this, Qianghua finally could not help but change her countenance. Wang Lu said with a sarcastic smile as you said, "Senior sister, this is just an immortal dream land. Even if I marry a wife and have children here, so what? You can swing your sword and break the world, but I can't hook up with a girl? This is not something that can be taken as a joke." Qianghua sternly said, "I'm not joking with you, so I'll have to trouble you to bear with it. Teacher Wang's small classroom is about to start." Boom. As soon as his voice fell, Wang Lu's heavy fist also landed on Qianghua's face. The physical pain was not that intense. Although he didn't know how Wang Lu got rid of the big heart demon oath and went all out, it seemed like the disadvantage of his non-phase method not being good at offense had not changed. With his newly advanced king pill, he could only cause some superficial wounds even with his magical power overflowing. However, the real damage was this unscrupulous humiliation. When cultivators fought, most of the time they would stop at a certain point. There were a few people who had enmity with each other, and if they attacked with more force, they would make their opponent pay a price before stopping. Only when there was absolutely no way to live under the same sky as them would they attack to take someone's life. But what Wang Lu was doing now was worse than killing someone. A scholar prefers death to humiliation. This was not just empty words. For the chief disciple of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, every action was no longer his own business. Everything was related to the glory of the sect. In the fight with Wang Lu, Qianghua could be defeated because she paid a heavy price to use the Kill Immortal sword. Although she was defeated, it was still a glorious defeat, while Wang Lu had an unfair advantage. However, this face-slapping humiliation could no longer be washed away by the previous reason. Qianghua had been cultivating for so many years, but she had never been humiliated like this. If she wanted to wash away this humiliation, she could only. "Senior sister Qianghua, I advise you not to do stupid things. I can't give you the opportunity to die together with me." When Qianghua made the decision in her heart and her jade mansion slightly trembled, Wang Lu suddenly stopped and leaned to the side, letting Lan come forward. Seeing this demon race girl, Qianghua couldn't help but frown, because this heavily armored girl, no matter how she looked at it, felt strange. There was a strong sense of incongruity, as if this body was a completely different person. "Oh, you're quite sharp," Lan faintly said. Her expression was as cold as ice, and this coldness immediately made Qianghua recognize her identity. "Faceless," Wang Lu said. "Yes, my gold medal assistant, Faceless. As long as he is here, don't even think about skipping class." With that, another heavy punch landed on Qianghua's face. Her jade-white cheeks slightly swelled, and a bruise overflowed. At the same time, Faceless, who was attached to Lan's body, stretched out her tail, and stabbed Xueqi's forehead. All of a sudden, a feeling of numbness spread all over her body and spread from her body to her jade mansion and primordial spirit. Xueqi felt that the king pill in her jade mansion stagnated, unexpectedly not listening to her command. Her primordial spirit was also blinded by the devil qi, becoming turbid and unclear. In such a state, even if she wanted to die together with him, she couldn't. The burden of the kill immortal sword on her was a bit heavier than expected. Unexpectedly, she couldn't even resist a trivial poison. This is not a trivial poison. Faceless seemed to have anticipated Xueqi's thoughts and lightly explained. The physical structure of this race is very powerful. The tip of their tail can produce an astonishing poisonous substance. Not to mention that you're not in a good state right now. Even if you're at your peak, if you're unguarded and stung, you can only lie on the ground and be at the mercy of others. Xueqi's heart was anxious and shocked. As the lead disciple of Xueqi sect, she traveled all year round to gain experiential learning, so how could she not guard against poison? Her body was planted with Xueqi branch, which could purify all kinds of poison. In addition, she also cultivated several body protection methods, so no matter how powerful the poison was, it was impossible for it to penetrate into her body without being noticed, unless she reluctantly operated her primordial spirit to look inside her body, and sure enough, she saw that the Xueqi branch had been broken. That's right, those punches just now were not only to humiliate her, but also to target the Xueqi branch. The poison in his fists was used to attract the Xueqi branch, and then he used the nameless sword to counterattack? Wang Lu's targeting was too strong. The existence of the Xueqi branch was Xueqi's life-saving card. Even in Xueqi sect, only a few people knew about it, so what about him? That's right, previously, she and Faceless One had a fierce battle. Perhaps it was at that time that she exposed a lot of her cards. However, after these thoughts crossed her mind, Xueqi suddenly realized a more serious problem. Red face, heavy armor, poisonous tail, this image, she had vaguely seen it somewhere before. Thinking to this, Xueqi couldn't even care about the shame and anger in her heart. She wanted to speak, but the poison spread, making her mouth and tongue numb. She wanted to use her primordial spirit to transmit her voice, but she found out that Wang Lu had used his non-phase sword qi to set up a defense outside his body, isolating all external forces from invading. But at this time, he was still so cautious. Just as Xueqi gradually became anxious, Wang Lu suddenly opened his mouth. Senior Sister Xueqi, based on my understanding of you, you're actually not a cruel and bloodthirsty person. Whether it's in public, you need to consider the sect's prestige, or in private, as far as I know, you're a fairly generous lead disciple. However, in this world, you killed hundreds of millions of creatures without batting an eyelid. Just because this is an immortal dreamland? Wang Lu said with a faint smile. That shouldn't be the case, right? Look, apart from you, every single one of the 5 chief disciples has invested their true feelings into this world. Because even if everything here is a dream, everything you do and every single action you take is something that really happened. You've killed hundreds of millions of creatures with your sword. Aren't you afraid of being haunted by heart demons? Xueqi sneered in her heart, but the next moment, Wang Lu suddenly approached her and slowly said, "Of course you're not afraid." Fairy Xueqi has always done things in an open and above-board manner. Even though this sword has committed a monstrous sin, your heart is magnanimous, and any heart demons can't entangle you. Because, what you've killed are the creatures of the demon world, the irreconcilable enemies of human beings. The more you kill, the more clear your mind is. Xueqi closed her eyes and didn't speak. There were some things that she really disdained to explain. Wang Lu said, "Moreover, you don't want to leave this matter to others. You discovered the truth by chance the moment you entered this ring, but you didn't even tell your junior brothers and sisters by your side, and you didn't even contact the other 4 chief disciples. You only planned to bear everything by yourself, because you believed that only you could bear this heavy burden. You're the lead disciple of Xueqi sect, and Xueqi sect is the leader of the Wanxian League. Right now, you're the fully deserving #1 person among your peers. Even if it's me, under fair conditions, my odds of winning are only 30 to 40%. And after a few decades, you will become one of the youngest supremes in 9 regions. At the same time, you're more likely to take over the position of Supreme He too and become the leader of this world. In addition to supreme glory, this also means that it's difficult to shirk responsibility. Xueqi sect is often accused of being overbearing, but in the great war of immortals and demons, Xueqi sect has contributed the most. This is the way of the king, right? Upon hearing this, Qionghua's heart gradually calmed down, but at the same time, she was even more puzzled. She didn't expect other people to understand these things. After all, everyone's position was different, so their horizons were different. But Wang Lu, since he could understand all of this, why would he? Thinking to this, suddenly, a gust of wind blew in front of her, and Wang Lu's heavy punch once again fell. This punch was exceptionally painful. Senior Sister Qianghua, the affirmation in your eyes just now has strengthened my determination to wake you up. Wang Lu said, if you're the kind of person who only cares about benefits and abandons all benevolence, righteousness, and morality, I would be too lazy to care about you. But now, bam! Another punch. Qianghua felt that her eyes were somewhat unable to open, but, even if she could open them, she really couldn't see through Wang Lu's next step. Perhaps your understanding of the so-called way of the king is not wrong. Even the most generous king will become cruel to the enemy. But your sword strike that broke the world with ease reminds me of another kind of person. Wang Lu said, they tie a large number of explosive talismans on their bodies, and fearlessly rush into the enemy's crowd to detonate them, causing heavy casualties. They face death calmly, and at the same time, they don't care who died under the explosive talismans. Newlywed wife? A toddler learning to speak? Old people past their prime? It doesn't matter. They are the enemy, they deserve to die. In order to kill them, I can pay any price. See, what's the difference between that and what you did? Qianghua just sneered. Her mind was firm. How could it be shaken by words? Wang Lu also said, moreover, Senior Sister Qianghua, have you ever thought about what this immortal dreamland wants us to do? The one who built the entire group of immortal tombs is Dixian of 9 regions, but the background of this ring is set in the demon world. Moreover, everyone around them seems to be flesh and blood. Zhan Zai, that idiot, even fell in love with the forest fairy, or the demon forest demon. It can be seen that letting us deepen the contact and exchange with these demons is the deliberate intention of the designer. But, what's the meaning of this design? I don't know what you're thinking, Senior Sister, but the way I see it, the designer clearly wants to tell us that even if they're absolutely irreconcilable enemies, they're still living beings of flesh and blood, and we share the same feelings. When Wang Lu said this, he suddenly felt that Qianghua under his feet fiercely trembled. Her tongue was paralyzed by poison, and her angry voice intermittently sounded. So, you can even ignore the distinction between immortal and demon and call them brothers? Brothers? Wang Lu smiled and shook his head, and then punched Qianghua in the face, making her completely shut up. Do they deserve it? Chapter 433. Withdrawing his fist, Wang Lu wiped the blood on the back of his hand on the rock wall, and then said, I actually don't have any feelings for the devil race. Whether they are flesh and blood or heartless, I don't really care, because after the end of the Great War of Immortals and Devils, there is basically no chance to see them, and those little demons and devils are not up to us to deal with. TSK, don't look at me like that. It makes me look indifferent and ignorant. I'm not the lead disciple of Xueqi sect, so I don't have to take the initiative to bear the heavy responsibility of the rise and fall of the immortal cultivation world. Wang Lu said with a rather sarcastic smile, as if the heavy responsibility of the rise and fall of the immortal cultivation world was an extremely ridiculous thing to him. But you are different. You are the lead disciple of Xueqi sect, and the future leader of the Wanxian League. Anyone can do whatever they want, but you can't. Your every move has far-reaching implications, and at the same time, you have to be the role model of the Wanxian League. But now, your attitude of genocide is a matter of course, and it is easy to lead the Wanxian League into an extremely dangerous situation. Wang Lu said, and then released a sharp sword chi from his fingertips, which carved a character on the rock wall. Next to the seal, he also carved a portrait of Qianghua's head. Wang Lu's painting skill was quite profound. In just 2 or 3 strokes, the girl on the rock wall was quite charming. However, after the painting was completed, Wang Lu deliberately drew a pinch of rendan between Qianghua's nose and lips, and then shook his head and whispered, racists are all dregs. Qianghua was full of confusion, but she saw that Wang Lu had no intention of answering. Sure enough, Wang Lu quickly removed the painting on the rock wall, and then said, Senior Sister Qianghua, although you usually look approachable, deep in your heart, you are noble, cold, and stubborn. Even if I break the sky, I can't change your 3 views. So, I chose a more direct way to slap your face. But I have always been a reasonable person. If I didn't say anything and directly slap your face, it would seem that I am a villain, taking advantage of people's difficulties. That's why I talk as I fight. That way, I can fight openly and confidently. No matter how Xueqi thought about it, she didn't think that it was honorable to take advantage of her condition to be ruthless, but she did remember Wang Lu's previous words. As Wang Lu said, Xueqi's mind was very firm, and could not be shaken by just a few words. She admitted that what Wang Lu said was very reasonable, but that was only Wang Lu's reasoning. The next time she saw the demon race, she would not hesitate to use the kill immortal sword. But besides her stubbornness, she also remembered that in addition to her own reasoning, there was another reasoning in the world. I know that even if I beat you beyond recognition, you will still do what you want. So, I didn't beat you to change you, but to make you remember one thing. Wang Lu said and punched Xueqi's nose. What you want to do is your own business, but as long as you dare to mess around, I will slap your face just like today. You are indeed better than me in a one-on-one fight, but since I started my journey, I have dealt with too many powerful enemies that are more powerful than me, so I don't need you. Xueqi did not speak. Now that she was trapped in someone else's hands, any more words would only bring humiliation to herself. The path of immortal cultivation was long, and the King Pill realm was actually just the starting point. As for the future, let's just wait and see. However, just as Xueqi was ready to endure all the humiliation, Wang Lu walked away from Xueqi and sat on the rock wall next to her. At the same time, Faceless also withdrew the needle on his tail. However, at this time, Xueqi was completely paralyzed and could not move at all. The first lesson is over. Let's start the second lesson. Wang Lu said, "This lesson is relatively easy. Let me tell you about my strategy." Xueqi remained silent. Actually, when it comes to strategy alone, I have nothing to say. Because even if I did, it would be meaningless to you. I worked hard to lay out the plan and control the other three lead disciples. The three forces formed an alliance to try to contend against you, but in the end, you broke everything with a single sword. Everyone's style is different, so there is nothing to seek common ground while reserving differences. When it came to Xueqi's world-breaking sword, Wang Lu still looked resentful. Although he had finally stabilized the situation at this time, it was not easy to let go of the fact that Xueqi had turned the tables. However, there is one thing I can teach you, and that is to try to figure out the designer's thinking. From a simple framework alone, you did a good job, but the general direction is wrong. No matter how much you do, it will still be the opposite of what you did. Wang Lu said and pointed his finger to the sky. It's the same old question. What do you think the designer's meaning is in setting this ring in the demon realm? If that group of Dixian just wanted to leave a legacy for us, there is no need to deliberately add the background of the demon realm. But to say that they want us to have a deeper understanding of the demon race. What is the meaning? There is no reason for the Dixian to be partial to the demon race. The Great War of Immortals and Demons started a long time ago. Xueqi still closed her eyes and said nothing, but it could be seen that her heart had been faintly shaken. In this ring, her opening was different from everyone else. Because she had understood the truth early, she had never been as sincere as Zhan Zai and the others. She had always looked at this ring from a detached point of view, so there were many things that she did not care about. At this time, listening to Wang Lu's words, it was really a bit strange. Regarding this problem, I have an immature opinion. Wang Lu said, for the demon race, we have always had a rule. Fighting against the demon race is greater than the heavens. Even if there is a great hatred between us, we must temporarily put it down, right? Then, if we apply this logic, although we currently have a great hatred with the demon race, under special circumstances, shouldn't we also put down the hatred first? Upon hearing this, Xueqi suddenly opened her eyes. Her mind was greatly shaken, and she looked at Wang Lu in disbelief. What he said was right, this was indeed a possibility. Moreover, in connection with the existence of this group of immortal tombs, it seemed to confirm Wang Lu's statement more and more. You mean? What I mean is there an existence that is more powerful than the demon race that requires the unity of the ancient earth immortals and the demon race to be able to contend against it, and then pass this on in the form of the group of immortal tombs? Wang Lu said but then shook his head. Of course, my guess is just this. An enemy that can make us put down the distinction between immortal and demon race, Forgive me for my poor imagination, but I really can't think of it. Qianghua suppressed the shock in her heart and thought, you really can't think of it? Or do you think of it, but you don't want to say it out loud? Moreover, senior sister Qianghua, don't you think there's another detail here that's worth paying attention to? Qianghua blinked her eyes, signaling him to ask. At this time, the bruises on her face that were violently beaten by Wang Lu had gradually healed, but her blinking actions still looked a bit funny. While enjoying the beautiful scenery with great interest, Wang Lu quietly recorded it with the recording jade talisman and explained, don't you think the background setting of this ring is too detailed? The customs of the demon race shown in the immortal dreamland have reached the level of detail. There are many details that I can't find in any ancient book. For example, the forest fairies of Eternal Tree, or the demon forest charming spirit race. They were already on the verge of extinction during the Great War of Immortal and Demon. Their cultural inheritance was completely severed, and they existed as a vassal of other powerful demon race. However, in this ring I was fortunate to see the unique civilization of this race. It is indeed pleasing to the eye, but at the same time, it also makes people curious. How could the civilization that even the demon race could not restore in the past reappear in this ring? At this point, the answer was already obvious. It was just that the answer was too shocking for everyone, so no one said it out loud. The silence lasted for a while. A moment later, Qianghua stood up, and the injuries caused by Wang Lu just now had completely recovered. Today's matter, Qianghua will remember it. In the future, I will certainly pay you back. Qianghua said and cupped her hands towards Wang Lu. There was no resentment between her eyebrows, but there was a faint trace of admiration in her eyes. Obviously, what she would return in the future was not hatred. Her voice fell, and Qianghua's figure gradually faded away. At the same time from her body, the power of 4 different colored blood spirits gushed out and poured into Wang Lu's body. The next moment, the power of the 5 spirits merged into one, and a blood-red crown slowly condensed from the void and appeared in the hands of Wang Lu. Was this the thing that the 5 chief disciples were fighting for? Wang Lu played with the crown in his hand for a while. It indeed contained a powerful and mysterious power. As the proof of the overlord of this world, as long as he wore it, he would be able to rule the world. However, after the sea of blood created by the kill immortal sword, this world was almost destroyed. What was the point of being the king of the wasteland? Moreover, was it so easy to be the king of the demon world? Anyway, the most important thing in this ring was already in his hands. It was time to get out of here. Here, this thing is for you, Wang Lu said and threw the 5 blood spirits crown on Lan's head. At this time, the girl had a blank look on her face. She had just been freed from the state of being possessed by Faceless. Wang Lu did not intend to say too much to her. From the beginning to the end, Lan maintained the low profile that a servant should have. She followed Wang Lu here and there, busying herself like a handyman. But Wang Lu knew very well that this little girl was not as simple as she looked. There were too many secrets hidden in her body, but there was no time to explore them one by one. After handing over the 5 blood spirits crown to Lan, Wang Lu patted her on the shoulder. Next, work hard to rebuild your home, young girl. With that, the world in front of them was torn apart, turning into countless fragments. This long battle for the 5 blood spirits crown had finally come to an end. The immortal dreamland was broken. The next step should be to return to the entrance, which was a bright place with a river of stars. However, this time it was different. After the world was broken, what came into sight was a gray fog. In the fog, a vague and hollow laughter came faintly. Since the background of this level has been cracked to this point, why are you in such a hurry to leave? While speaking, the fog dissipated, and a purple-black fire appeared in front of Wang Lu. Wang Lu shrugged helplessly. Hero, I have something important to do now. Why don't you leave your contact information, and I will come to you when I have time. Something important to do? Do you mean this? While speaking from the countless pores on Wang Lu's body, a thick black fog gushed out and gathered around the purple fire. However, like a moth flying into a flame, it disappeared as soon as it came into contact with the flame. I've helped you get rid of your heart demon. Now, can you seriously talk to me? Chapter 434. For Wang Lu, the removal of the heart demon was like solving a fatal crisis. There were 2 reasons for the overflow of the heart demon. One was to make a breakthrough, and the other was to beat Xueqi. The majority of the reason was because of the breakthrough. The matter of making the king pill, in the eyes of ordinary people, was tantamount to a deviant whimsical idea. Even Xueqi, with her knowledge, found it difficult to understand its mystery, which showed how rare it was. Behind this rare thing, there was naturally a huge price. Wang Lu's king pill was round and plump, golden in color, but in essence, it was a pseudo-pill. The real Jindan stage required a cultivator to put all of their cultivation since they set foot on the path of immortality into it, and then separate the primordial spirit and immortal heart. If there was a slight mistake, the Jindan stage would collapse, and the Jade Mansion would collapse. If the primordial spirit and immortal heart were also planted inside, then it would be a dead end. Such a huge risk, naturally, there must be thorough preparation. For an ordinary cultivator to break through the king pill, it was as difficult as crossing a heavenly tribulation. Medicinal pills, magical treasures, and arrays were all indispensable. However, Wang Lu suddenly broke through the king pill in the midst of the kill immortal sword sea of blood. No matter how magical the non-phase method was, it was impossible to openly violate the common sense of the immortal path. This pseudo-pill was one of the ultimate life-saving skills that his master had taught him. However, the principle behind it was actually to quench one's thirst by drinking poison, to condense all the strength in one's body into one place. Then, instead of seeking perfection and unity, he would use his strength to twist it together. And this force was Wang Lu's heart demon. Heart demon existed since ancient times, as if the legend of the heart demon had been passed down since the beginning of the written records. The power of the heart demon was endless, and no one could stop it. Wang Lu could use the power of the heart demon to forcibly synthesize the pseudo-pill. However, after the pill was formed, the heart demon would collect the price. At that time, all the magical power in his body would flow in reverse, his sword bones would break, and his death would be miserable. Such a life-saving method seemed like a suicide method. However, there was always a gap between the pill and the heart demon, and the success or failure of many things in the world depended on that gap. Not to mention that Wang Lu had an existence that was almost the same as the heart demon. Faceless One made his move, temporarily suppressing Wang Lu's heart demon. And Wang Lu considered that the heart demon would not let him go, so he simply put his heart demon oath to the back of his mind and fight to his heart's content. However, after defeating Xueqi and winning the 5 blood spirit crown, the heart demon was, after all, a fatal threat. Faceless One was not omnipotent, and the time to suppress the heart demon was limited. Therefore, Wang Lu planned to return to the sect with the spirit sword heavenly talisman. Although the heart demon seemed to be unsolvable, since this move was passed down by his master, he believed that she must have the antidote. If there was really no antidote, then before he died, he would use the name of Wisdom Sect to borrow a huge sum of money from the mysterious Sky Mansion, and then make a will. All of my debts will be inherited by my master. But now, he didn't have to worry about whether his master could save him or not, because the person who could save him was right in front of him. It was just that, if he could choose, he would rather take the risk and return to the sect with the heavenly talisman to ask for help. Because the purple-black flame in front of him seemed more terrible than the heart demon. Moreover, he roughly knew what the other party wanted to say, which was not a pleasant topic to hear. The heart demon has been eliminated. Can we have a chat? Wang Lu sighed. Mr. might not know, but my heart demon and I have developed feelings for each other for a long time. Now our feelings are deep, and I can't bear to separate. I hope Mr. can return my heart demon to me, and then let us go. That purple-black flame stagnated for a long time, and then the flame continued to flutter. That muffled voice said, "You have developed feelings for your heart demon for a long time?" Wang Lu confidently nodded and said, "Mister, have you ever heard of a popular story in 9 regions? My girlfriend is a zombie, which tells a touching and tragic story of love between a human and a zombie. Since humans and zombies can get together, what's so inconceivable about my heart demon and I developing feelings for each other for a long time? The inconceivable thing is that the heart demon is ruthless. Even if you are the #1 love sage in 9 regions, and you can even get together with flowers and plants, you can't infect the heart demon." Wang Lu said, "Everything has an exception. There are thousands of heart demons, and this one in my family is especially obedient and cute. There are hundreds of millions of heart demons in the world. Which one of them is not familiar to me? Do you want to compete with me in understanding the heart demon?" That purple-black flame suddenly let out a burst of sneer, and then with a loud bang, the flame exploded, revealing its true appearance. Its body was more than 30 feet long, covered with bone spurs, red face and fangs, and its eyes were like torches. It was an out-and-out demon. Such a strange shape, such a monstrous demonic flame, such a clear understanding of the heart demon, and even casually released it. The heart demon that had already been deeply rooted in Wang Lu's body was easily dispelled by the opposite party. Who else could it be besides the demon of the demon world? Seeing this demon, Wang Lu inwardly sighed. The various speculations in the immortal dreamland were indeed true, but it was really not enough to make people excited. It's as you guessed. The strong devil man nodded. I am the creator of this immortal dreamland, and also one of your so-called ancient earth immortals. What the hell? After gawking for a moment, Wang Lu shook his head and wryly smiled. This group of immortal tombs, which was regarded as one of the 10 miracles in 9 regions in the past 1,000 years, unexpectedly had the participation of the demon race. Moreover, it could even be ranked as one of the Dixian. This was even more outrageous than his 7th uncle, who was a slave of Kunlun immortal sect, becoming an elder of Spirit Sword sect. It was as inconceivable as a capitalist joining the party. If the outside world knew about this, who knows how big of a mess it would cause. At least, there would be a big turmoil in the excavation management. Not to mention Qianghua, who was an extreme racist who regarded the difference between immortal and demon as more important than her virginity. If she knew that a demon could become a Dixian, perhaps she would directly go to the heavenly realm and appeal to the higher authorities. However, for Wang Lu, it was not that difficult for him to accept it. In the previous ring, he repeatedly reverse-deduced the designer's idea and gradually had a guess. Now that his guess had been confirmed, it was not that surprising. Since the topic had been opened, Wang Lu no longer shirked and bluntly said, "So, what advice does Senior Dixian have for me?" "Advice?" The devil sneered. "You really do need someone to give you some advice. Let me ask you, do you remember what someone reminded you before the opening of this group of immortal tombs?" Wang Lu frowned, and the memory in his mind quickly returned to a year ago. At that time, the leaders of the 5 super sects joined forces to open the gate, and then someone from the gate said something, explained the background of the group of immortal tombs, and then gave him a reminder. The group of immortal tombs is the legacy left by the ancestors. If you want to take away the treasures inside, you have to inherit the will of the ancestors, which is a necessary responsibility. Now that the group of immortal tombs had been open for more than a year, although the overall progress was not fast, no one knew how many cultivators have benefited from it. Moreover, Wang Lu, this rare talent, caused the time to backtrack. However, he never heard anyone say that they shouldered any responsibility. Regarding this issue, the excavation management once had a discussion. However, due to the lack of clues, the final conclusion could only be: the wish of the Dixian was that everyone in the world could ascend to immortality. Therefore we, the later generation of cultivators, must inherit the will, carry forward the spirit of not afraid of hardship and tiredness, continuously strengthen the construction of immortal cultivation civilization, and push the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions to a new level. At that time, Wang Lu also didn't have a mature idea. However, after seeing everything in the immortal dreamland, he vaguely guessed what the so-called responsibility was. That. Wang Lu hesitated to open his mouth. However, before he could finish, the demon interrupted him. The world is very big, much bigger than what you ignorant later generation cultivators think. These words were said without rhyme or reason, but how fast was Wang Lu's mind? He immediately reacted and said, "You mean there are many worlds? In addition to the 9 regions, the Western continent, and the demon world, which we are familiar with, are there other worlds?" The demon froze for a moment and then nodded slightly. "Yes, you're not that unbearable. Your mind is quite open-minded." As a human being, Wang Lu really didn't feel that there was anything to be proud of in receiving the praise of the demon race, especially in this matter. "I just happen to see more than the average person. I once caught a glimpse of the boundless world. In short, in places that we don't understand, there are some unusually powerful hostile creatures, such as the ancient beasts, the 12 ancestors of witches, the iron and steel core, the 3-body people and so on, which may endanger the safety of everyone. Therefore, the immortals and demons did not hesitate to join hands to fight against the enemy. However, the great undertaking of fighting against the enemy has not been completed, so they created a group of immortal tombs for the future generations to inherit? There were still many things that didn't make sense in this speculation. For example, if they really encountered a crisis that could lead to the extinction of the world, why was the 9 regions completely ignorant about it for so many years? The Dixian were even willing to accept the demon race, so why didn't they leave any news on the continent? Was it worth keeping it a secret, or was there something else? Moreover, in the face of such a big crisis, it seemed that some people should help. However, the most important thing now was that he had learned a lot of secrets. Could it be that he had to shoulder the responsibility of maintaining the survival of the 2 worlds and contend against the opponents that the Dixian couldn't do anything to? Wasn't this progress a bit too fast? Well, he was a professional adventurer, so it was common for him to challenge and open maps across levels. However, without waiting for Wang Lu to think too much, the demon race said, "The things that you think about are still far away from you. There are many secrets that can't be revealed so quickly. And you guys, especially you, your pace of exploration is a bit too fast." Wang Lu frowned as he listened. The demon race explained, "This group of immortal tombs is a place of experiential learning and also a place of inheritance. There are many kinds of immortal dreamlands, some of which are quite special. You will see some incredible scenes." Backtracking in time? The demon race chuckled. You can think of it as backtracking in time, but every time you successfully stimulate a vision, it means that you are one step closer to the real inheritance. And now, are you really ready for the inheritance? Wang Lu sighed. Of course not. This kind of big thing related to world peace should be handed over to senior sister Hua. As for me, it's enough as long as my wife and children heat up the Kong bed. That's why I said, please return my demon heart sauce to me. Hearing Wang Lu's words, the demon race also laughed. He waved his pair of stone-like thick arms and threw a blood-colored gem. Your demon heart sauce. Wang Lu took the gem and felt that it was scalding hot, which made it difficult for him to control. He quickly put it into the special jade box and then settled down. After sending out the gem, the demon race was once again wrapped in the purple-gray flame, and the gray fog became thicker and thicker. Wang Lu knew that this was probably the signal to leave, so he turned around and left. Soon, the stars shone brightly as he returned to the entrance of the group of immortal tombs. Behind him, in the thick fog, the voice of the demon race was already inaudible. Next, do your best. Later generation cultivator. This is all I can do for you. With that, the fireball collapsed with a bang, and along with it, the astonishing appearance of the body also collapsed. The knotted crimson muscles fell off along with the bone spurs, and the 3 Zhongtal giant collapsed just like that. What remained in the original place was a slim and beautiful figure. The woman was tall and fit, and behind her, there was a nimble tail gently swaying. And in the woman's hand, there was a broken and old crown that she was playing with. Chapter 435. It really feels like a lifetime has passed. When leaving the group of immortal tombs, Wang Lu let out a heartfelt sigh. However, as soon as his voice fell, his expression suddenly became cold and stiff. He continued to say, "From your sigh, I seem to hear a lot of meanings. Do you want to emphasize the backtracking of time in the group of immortal tombs?" Then Wang Lu shook his head. "I just want to say that my Jindan stage is gone just like that. Just a moment ago, I was still a Taoist master of Jindan stage who could fiercely push Hua to the ground, but the next moment, I was beaten back to my original form, reduced to a shoot-on waist. If you want the king pill, I can help you. As long as you are willing to believe in the holy light, with my help, let alone a mere king pill, even Yuanying stage is just around the corner." Upon hearing this, Wang Lu immediately became curious. "You, this Western continent heart devil, are actually proficient in our 9 regions immortal path to this point that you even have a way to quickly reach Yuanying stage?" Faceless One explained, "The laws of the Eastern and Western continents are different, but there are also many similarities. The so-called Yuanying stage is nothing more than a rebirth from the dead, turning the spiritless king pill into a spiritless Yuanying stage. Our holy light religion is also good at this. The earliest holy woman of the church was blessed by the sea of holy light, which condensed the holy fetus in her abdomen and gave birth to the holy son with a pure body. And as a quasi-saint of the church, it's not difficult for me to help you do the same." After Faceless One finished his words, even though Wang Lu's spirit was firm, he still didn't speak for a quarter of an hour. Forget it. Finally, Wang Lu unceremoniously made a decision. Not to mention that your method of achieving the holy fetus is very different from the main path of Yuanying stage in 9 regions. If I really choose to do so, it would be tantamount to handing over my weakness to a fool, so that she can laugh at me for being pregnant from time to time. Ridiculous stubbornness. U9 regions people have always advocated giving up everything in order to achieve the supreme immortal path. But you, for a matter of face, cut the shortcut. On this point, the gap between you and your master is really too big. Wang Lu sneered disapprovingly. It was only natural that there was a huge gap between them. In the vast 9 regions, who dared to compete with Wang Wu in moral integrity? Then hurry up and get her pregnant if you have the ability. She has been cultivating for more than 100 years, and she has already ground out 2 king pills, but she still hasn't reached the nascent soul stage. Why don't you think of a way to get her pregnant with twins? If she can stay in confinement for a few years without going out, it would be a great benefit to the entire 9 regions. Along the way, Wang Lu and Faceless One began to study and discuss the issue of Yuanying stage. On the other hand, Wang Lu returned to Spirit Sword Mountain through the array of Fengdu City. Bon voyage. This time, he had broken through 3 trials in a row, and his harvest was even greater than he had expected. Helping the sect clear all the prerequisites for the 36 chains was secondary. The secret he had obtained from the last chain, the 5 blood spirits crown, was the truly important harvest. In comparison, the 3 days he had bitterly resisted the immortal slaughtering sword sea of blood, and his cultivation base had skyrocketed, were not worth mentioning. When he returned to Spirit Sword Mountain, he saw that on the 4 divisions peak, several elders had already been waiting there in advance. After landing and inquiring about it, he found out that the battle for the 5 blood spirits crown had been widely spread in the 9 regions. The main reason was that 3 days ago, the lead disciple of Kunlun's sect, Zhou Mumu, visited the 10,000 Art sect and challenged Zhang Zai, who had just returned to the sect. The battle for the lead disciple of the 5 uniques was not a trivial matter, especially the matter of the battle, which was by no means a personal matter. Zhou Mumu rashly visited the sect and challenged the lead disciple of 10,000 Art sect, which, if careless, would cause a dispute between the 2 super sections. However, Zhang Zai tacitly agreed to it. Moreover, he tried his best to appease his fellow sect members and then had a fierce fight with Zhou Mumu in the dojo of the 10,000 Art sect. The result of the battle was a tie, but the process made the onlookers' eyeballs pop out of their sockets. As everyone knew, the lead disciple of Kunlun's sect, Zhou Mumu, was not good at fighting. It was just that, at her current stage of immortal cultivation, her ability to fight in a head-on fight was perhaps the last among the 5 uniques. Although Zhang Zai was also not known for being good at fighting, he could firmly suppress Zhou Mumu. However, in this fight, Zhou Mumu's first move was an eye-opener. She abandoned her usual primal chaos diamond ring and reached out her hand to summon a blood-colored spear. The spear's momentum was great, sweeping away thousands of enemies with an indomitable momentum. Although Zhou Mumu was just at the early stage of the low-rank king pill and her stage has not yet stabilized, as soon as this blood-colored spear came out, some of the elite disciples of the 10,000 Art sect who were at the peak of the king pill stage paid their attention to it. Using their unique heart sutra for a long time, they found out that they might not be able to take it. This kind of strength was even better than Zhang Zai before he entered the group of immortal tombs. However, Zhang Zai was not in a hurry. He reached out his hand to the sky and a bolt of lightning fell to the ground. Naturally, his thunder body was stimulated. Then, all kinds of wonderful methods came out as he pleased, like a rain of flowers. What was even more wonderful was that the combination of the spells was smooth and natural, which was wonderful and unique. Thunder body was a hard and fierce method, but under Zhang Zai's control, the lightning actually faintly showed a bit of gentleness. For the several elders of 10,000 Art sect who were familiar with him, this was even more inconceivable, because it meant that Zhang Zai's 10,000 motionless immortal heart had finally reached perfection, no longer lacking. And to do this, it meant that he had seen through the barrier of emotion. For the cultivators of 10,000 Art sect, seeing through the barrier of emotion might be more difficult than having heavenly spirit root. When Zhang Zai went to the group of immortal tombs for experiential learning, everyone thought that he must have a great harvest. However, no one thought that Zhang Zai would actually be able to overcome the most difficult barrier. In terms of strength improvement, his improvement was even greater than Zhou Mumu's blood spear. However, the 2 people in the fight obviously had a tacit understanding. Although the fight was fierce, it didn't get angry. After a while, the two of them stopped fighting. Zhou Mumu turned around and left. Zhang Zai, as the lead disciple, ordered his people to send her off as a distinguished guest. This fight could be said to be inexplicable. The reason for the fight, the process, and the result seemed so unreasonable. Perhaps only the two parties involved knew the truth. First, it was to verify the harvest in the five spirits' power struggle, and second, it was to settle a matter that had been bothering them. The relationship between Zhou Mumu, Zhang Zai, and the couple in the immortal dreamland had completely become a thing of the past with this fight. However, in the eyes of others, regardless of the truth behind it, the huge improvement of the cultivation base of these two people was real and obvious to all. Even though each of the lead disciples of the five uniques had amazing qualifications, it was impossible for them to advance by leaps and bounds in the immortal dreamland for just a month. What exactly did the lead disciples experience in this immortal dreamland? Unfortunately, no one said anything about it. Only the elders of their respective sects knew what their chief disciple had experienced. Therefore, the last person to leave the group of immortal tombs, Wang Lu, from his Lingjian school, became the only one among the five uniques who knew nothing about the content of the immortal dreamland. Considering that this ring was likely to hide a big secret, the elders could not help but be anxious. Regarding his experience in the group of immortal tombs, Wang Lu had nothing to hide. Especially to the several elders, he even told them about Faceless One. Well, this is Master's new loyal dog. Come and meet me. These are my several martial uncles. Let me introduce myself first. With that, Wang Lu's complexion suddenly became stiff, and then Faceless One introduced himself. Hello everyone, I am Faceless, the bearer of the holy light, the guide of the path of truth. Come and believe in the holy light with me. Before he could finish, he was forcibly interrupted by Wang Lu. Get rid of this disgusting advertisement. Faceless One's voice suddenly turned cold. Oh, are you guys those useless fellow disciples who only know how to drag Wang Wu down? I've heard her talk about you before, and now I see that you really live up to your reputation. I advise you to obediently hand over the position of sect leader, otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite to you guys. Before his voice fell, he heard the flustered and exasperated voice of a woman from the non-phase peak. How dare you King trick me? After the small disturbance caused by Faceless One's honesty was over, Wang Wu, whose 1-year stipend was deducted, took away Faceless One, while Wang Lu stayed behind to finish the unfinished story. It was about the cooperation between the demon race and the Dixian, the doubts about the backtracking of time, and the conjecture about the unknown enemy. In this regard, the several elders obviously knew more about the inside story. After listening to Wang Lu, they looked at each other and exchanged a lot of information without the need of primordial spirit transmission. Unfortunately, Wang Lu did not establish such a deep tacit understanding with the several elders. He could only see the expressions of affection from the several elders, but he didn't know what exactly it was. When he wanted to ask, he saw sect leader Feng Yin waving his hand. Don't ask about this matter. It's not the time for you to care about it. That demon race is right. Right now, you are not qualified to receive the inheritance of the Dixian. For the time being, you don't need to participate in the exploration of the group of immortal tombs. We, the several old guys, will take over. During this period of time, you should recuperate from your injury and take down the king pill first. The sect leader was indeed the sect leader. He could see the key point at a glance. What Wang Lu needed the most right now was not to continue to explore the group of immortal tombs, but to take down the king pill. On the road of immortal cultivation, if one did not advance, one would fall back. However, the opposite could also be true. The situation forced the cultivator to move forward bravely. For example, right now, after Wang Lu used the power of the demon heart to create the fake king pill, although the demon heart had been taken away by the demon race, it was not to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. The source of the demon heart was Wang Lu himself. From the moment he decided to temporarily use the demon heart to create the king pill, the demon heart would never be at peace. Although the demon heart had been cut off, with the passage of time, the demon heart would regenerate like dandruff. The demon heart that restrained him from hurting people with a mortal method was irrelevant. He had already adapted to it after many years of cultivation. However, the one that created the fake king pill was particularly dangerous. There was only one way to eradicate it. By cultivating the real king pill and using the real king pill to cover the fake king pill, the demon heart would not be able to exert its power. Therefore, for Wang Lu, achieving the king pill was a natural need. However, achieving the king pill was easier said than done, especially when the threat of the demon heart was hanging over his head. Let alone Wang Lu, this king pill had accumulated so much that it was rare in the world that he had to face a bottleneck problem with his void spirit root. If he wanted to achieve the king pill in a short period of time, he had to resort to trickery. Thinking of this, Wang Lu could not help but think of Faceless One. Perhaps, when it was time to borrow his power, he should not hesitate. Chapter 436. In the bamboo room of Non-Phase Peak, Wang Lu found Faceless One, who had been sealed into a ball by Wang Wu, on the dining table in the living room. Because he was too honest, this time, Faceless One was sealed very firmly. The gray sphere faintly flickered with metallic luster, which seemed to be cast from the toughest meteorite iron. Plus, outside the sphere, there were 119 layers of non-phase sword chi personally left by Wang Wu. For Faceless One, this could be described as an indestructible prison. Fortunately, although Faceless One was sealed, he still retained the ability to communicate with the outside world. During the time when Wang Wu went to the Stellar Peak for her 1 year of fine, Wang Lu found Faceless One and asked for his help. "Oh, you finally decided to believe in holy light?" Faceless One seemed quite excited, and Wang Lu's reaction was even more satisfactory. "I'll give you a chance. In a few days, I will go into seclusion to attack the King Pill realm. At that time, reenact our conversation in the Western Continent King's treasure house for me to hear." In the King's treasure house, Wang Lu and Faceless One's love-hate relationship could not be described in words. However, when it came to dialogue, there was only one real dialogue between the two. When Faceless One made a desperate struggle and was suppressed by Wang Lu in non-phase immortal's heart. For Wang Lu, that dialogue was more dangerous than many life and death battles. Because in the face of the temptation of Faceless One, Wang Lu almost couldn't help but agree. Faceless One's conditions were really very tempting. Rationally speaking, even with today's vision, agreeing to his conditions should be able to obtain more practical benefits. And to talk about the problem, it was just a little wrong to his own heart. And in this world, how could one's mind be clear about everything? However, what Wang Lu wanted was precisely to be clear about everything. Those trivial things were fine, but in front of the big right and wrong, he still had to resist all kinds of external temptations and follow his heart, which was not easy. Following his heart was one of the keys for Wang Lu to break through the King Pill. After the last conversation with Faceless One, Wang Lu's mind was purified, as if he had received a good baptism. His non-phase immortal heart cultivation greatly improved. Therefore, looking for Faceless One at this time was to use his pervasive bewitching ability to temper his will. Sure, but you have to bear the consequences yourself. Inside the iron ball, Faceless One's voice carried a faint smile, but how could Wang Lu not hear the coldness in it? "Now that I am your non-phase sex lackey, for the sake of Wang Wu's face, I will naturally not harm you. But now, in order to advance to the King Pill, you didn't hesitate to borrow the forbidden power, so you should bear the consequences yourself. If you let go of your immortal heart and let me bewitch you, then if you get help, the King Pill will be perfect, that would be a happy ending. But if not, if you are really tempted by me into the sea of holy light, even Wang Wu can't blame you. And is it possible for Wang Lu to be tempted into the sea of holy light?" Faceless One's faint laughter expressed his full confidence. In his view, Wang Lu was now like a holy embryo, half a fellow holy light religion person. However, for this dangerous move, Wang Lu also had his own confidence. "Huh, want to make me pregnant? Come and give it a try. Even Wang Wu can't do it. Can you? F***CK. This line sounds a little like someone who's giving up on themselves. For the next 3 days, under the guidance of reward giver Elder Lu Xian, Wang Lu went to the Misty Peak Golden Clay Hall to meditate in seclusion. After 3 alternating days and nights, with the first ray of morning sun shining into the Golden Clay Hall, Wang Lu finally ended his long preparation. At this time, his primordial spirit was full, and his sword bones were firm. In his jade mansion, a shudan echoed with the sunlight outside the window, glittering with golden light. Obviously, it had been accumulated to the extreme, and the breakthrough was imperative. At this time, Wang Lu had firmly set foot in the peak shudan stage. That golden round pill was like a substance, and the magical power contained in it was even more than 90% of the real king pill in 9 regions. However, compared to the real king pill, although the power of this peak shoot on stage was strong, it seemed slightly heterogeneous, and the magical power was not pure. Next, what Wang Lu had to do was to put all of himself into this king pill, and then separate and transcend, achieving an unprecedented purification. In the process of turning Shudon into reality, not only had his master repeatedly reminded him in the past 3 days, several other elders had also appeared to impart their experience. Were it not for the obstruction of reward giver elder, the more senior king pill disciples in the sect could not help but run to cheer for Wang Lu. The lead disciple of Lingjian school, Wang Lu, whose prestige was like the sun in the sky, had officially tried to break through the king pill. This was a major event whose influence was far from limited to Lingjian school. However, for Wang Lu, what happened next was destined to be different from what people expected. In accordance with the method taught by his master, Wang Lu circulated the 50 layers of non-phase magical power around his body, and then returned to the Shudon stage. At the same time, his primordial spirit went out of his purple mansion, sank into his jade mansion, and began to merge with the Shudon stage. This process was more or less based on Qionghua's trinity. It was just that the non-phase immortal heart did not merge with the Shudon stage. Instead, it slowly spread out and wrapped the fused Shudon stage. For Wang Lu, he only felt that in a blink of an eye, he had entered a mysterious place from the Golden Clay Palace. As far as the eye could see, there was endless chaos in the distance. Through the hazy fog of chaos, he could sometimes see a picture flashing by. However, no matter how hard he tried to look, those pictures were blurred. Wang Lu knew that this meant that his future was not fixed, and everything was possible in the future. Under his feet, there were thousands of forks that converged together. Starting from the first step, every inch of land contained different possibilities. However, among these thousands of forks, only 2 roads were the most open and aboveboard, which led directly to the supreme path. One of them was rich in color, broad and solid, which symbolized the non-phase method that Wang Lu cultivated, which took defense and survival as the primary goal. It also seemed to be the most promising road. However, at the same time, Wang Lu's eyes were attracted by the other road. Straight and unimpeded, it went straight through the sky from his feet. It was so steep that it was almost straight. And not far from the road, a fierce-looking old man was silently looking at him. Wang Lu cupped his hands. Greetings, Senior Sword Demon. Humph. Standing on this road was the Sword Demon Zhong Shangming, who taught Wang Lu his lifelong primal chaos heaven-splitting sword in the ancient sword tomb. At this time, seeing him again, Sword Demon looked unhappy. He stood with his hands behind his back, and there was a hint of disdain and regret in his eyes. Ignorant and stubborn. Wang Lu smiled apologetically, and then said, Junior is deeply ashamed to disappoint Senior's high expectations. Sword Demon said, I am not surprised that you have made today's choice. Since more than a year ago, your primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi has not advanced even an inch. With your talent, it is impossible for you to encounter a bottleneck. The only explanation is that you gave up this road. In the final analysis, you are still reluctant to part with this useless turtle-like method. Wang Lu said, I am indeed reluctant to part with it. The primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi that Senior passed to me is comparable to the immortal level method from the upper realm. If I can cultivate it according to this method, there is indeed a hope for me to ascend to immortality. However, the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword is Sword Demon's sword, not my, Wang Lu's sword. Sword Demon sneered. Yes, no matter how brilliant other people's path is, it is not your own. It is impossible for it to be 100% compatible with you. And you have a peerless aptitude, so there is indeed a hope for you to step on your own path. If it was 10,000 years ago. After the age of chaos, 9 regions is no longer the 9 regions filled with shining stars and geniuses. Now, even the man-made spirit root, this kind of trash, has begun to spread. In my opinion, I am afraid the new age of chaos is just around the corner. And unless you transcend and ascend to immortality, the effect of the environment on you is inevitable. So what if you have the void spirit root? In such a dirty world, what kind of path can you comprehend? Instead of cultivating the supreme path opened by the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword, do you still want to cling to the non-phase method? Wang Lu just smiled indifferently. Senior, to be honest, if I only rely on the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi, do you think I have a way to survive in the sea of blood of the kill immortal sword for 3 days and reach the pseudo-dance stage? Sword Demon was stunned and was speechless. Primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi, even in the 9 regions, was the most fierce and powerful sword technique. However, no matter how fierce the sword technique was, it was impossible to cross the gap between shoot-on stage and King Pill, and then directly face the kill immortal sword. On this point, it was indeed possible only with the non-phase method. Therefore, it can be seen that the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi is not omnipotent. Not to mention that Senior has already passed away. But now, who are you who are standing in front of me? Upon hearing this question, Sword Demon's complexion finally changed slightly. Wang Lu said, "The primal chaos heaven-splitting sword is indeed worthy to be called the supreme path of the sword, and Senior is indeed worthy to be the ancient sword demon. If I continue to cultivate this primal chaos heaven-splitting sword, either I can't obtain the path for the rest of my life, or I will be transformed by the path of the sword. And Senior will then obtain the opportunity to reincarnate, right?" Sword Demon said, "It's not reincarnation. My 3 souls and 7 spirits have long been shattered. Even a great principal golden immortal would not be able to bring me back from the dead. Right now, I'm just a projection in your heart, so you don't have to worry about it. As for the side effect of cultivating the path of the sword, it won't suddenly create a primordial spirit to seize your body. It's just that your temperament will indeed become more and more similar to mine. However, compared with ascending to the immortal world, what's a small change in temperament worth mentioning?" It was just that, these words were really lacking in strength. Before Sword Demon finished speaking, his figure gradually faded away. This meant that Wang Lu had begun to give up the path of primal chaos heaven-splitting sword. An immortal level method was certainly gratifying, but if the side effect was so big, then it was better not to cultivate it. Moreover, after leaving the ancient sword tomb, Wang Lu gradually realized the trouble of cultivating the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword. Because the creator of this method, Sword Demon, was not here, he simply could not consult him about the problems in cultivation. And this primal chaos heaven-splitting sword was an unconventional sword. Many of the tricks were designed for Sword Demon himself, so it was quite difficult for him to adapt it to himself. In contrast, although the appearance of non-phase method was not good, it played a role at the critical moment, which made the immortal level method dumbfounded. More importantly, this was a tailor-made method for him. During the cultivation period, no matter what problem he encountered, there would be someone who could give him pointers. This kind of advantage was something that the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword could never reach. However, thinking about giving up this immortal level sword, even if Wang Lu was a decisive person, he still couldn't help but hesitate. While he was hesitating, a familiar voice came. In the final analysis, the best way is to combine the advantages of the two. In fact, when you just left the ancient sword tomb, you also took this road. It's just that, as your cultivation base gradually deepened, you found that the road of fusion became more and more difficult. Therefore, you temporarily stopped cultivating the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword and wholeheartedly cultivated the non-phase method. While speaking, the white figure of Faceless One appeared in the middle of the 2 paths leading to the primal chaos. But now, I can give you an opportunity to combine the 2. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu smiled, because he had already guessed the next sentence. "Come and believe in the holy light." Chapter 437. Holy Light religion was second to none in the Western continent. Under its command were thousands of troops and thousands of strong people. The Sea of Holy Light was even more vast and boundless. If it was personified, it would be a true immortal or even a higher-level existence. However, compared to that huge amount, the all-embracing characteristic of the Sea of Holy Light was more worthy of attention. Holy Light religion had hundreds of millions of believers in the Western continent. However, whether these believers were poor or rich, healthy or sick, as long as they had a devotion to the Holy Light, it was possible to get the gift of the Sea of Holy Light. This ability to unify the different wills of tens of thousands of people was exactly what Wang Lu urgently needed. Primal Chaos Heaven-Splitting Sword Qi and Non-Phase Method were like an irreconcilable spear and shield. Since Wang Lu left the ancient sword tomb and inherited the legacy of Sword Demon, the elders of Lingjian School have spent a lot of effort on him. After all, an immortal level method that could lead to the ascension after the Age of Chaos was self-evident. It was comparable to the stellar sword method of Lingjian School. However, even with the wisdom of the elders of Heavenly Sword Hall, they ultimately failed to come up with a feasible plan. Therefore, out of practical considerations, Wang Lu suspended the practice of Primal Chaos Heaven Splitting Sword and concentrated on non-phase method. But now, Faceless One proposed a rather tempting plan. As long as he believed in the holy light, he could perfectly integrate Primal Chaos Heaven Splitting Sword and non-phase method, combining the strengths of both. These two were top-level in their respective fields. If they could be combined into one, surpassing the immortal level would not be a problem. However, was there really such a beautiful thing in this world? Of course there is. Faceless One affirmatively replied. Holy light is omnipotent. Wang Lu sneered. Unfortunately, the omnipotent holy light could not let you win 2 battles in Taoba City. In the past, the Wanxian League expedition to the Western continent, led by Supreme Tian Yu, the 9 regions cultivators fought against holy light religion. In the end, the power of the 2 popes was indeed shocking to the people of 9 regions. However, in the final analysis, it was the people of 9 regions who had the last laugh. Supreme Tian Yu and Feng Yin Taoist Master each defeated their opponents, which almost made the top level of holy light religion collapse. If holy light was really omnipotent, why were the spokesmen of holy light religion so incompetent? That's because they're only representatives, not the sea of holy light itself. Faceless One naturally replied, after thousands of years of development, holy light religion has established its ruling position in the Western continent. During this period, it not only created the glory of holy light, but also caused unprecedented internal friction. Wang Lu said, "You, the founder of the Priory of Zion, have the nerve to accuse internal friction." Faceless One said, "Were it not for the Priory of Zion to unify the opposing voices, the collapse of holy light religion would have been several hundred years earlier. Due to the long development of this huge organization, the internal checks and balances have resulted in the power being too scattered. If the Pope could receive more of the gift of the Sea of Holy Light into his own body, even if it was only 30% more, it would be useless even if the entire army of the 9 states attacked him that day. Unfortunately, after the civil strife 1,000 years ago, holy light religion limited the authority of the Pope and set a limit on the amount of holy light that could be used to avoid a disaster. However, under the restriction of the Pope, although he can shake the Western continent, in the face of the foreign invaders, it would be the holy light believers who suffer the bitter fruit." Upon hearing this, Wang Lu could not help but wrinkle his brows. This statement was unheard of. Of course it's unheard of, because even the high level of the church is not clear about this. Only a few people participated in the secret gathering 1,000 years ago, which did not include any of the high level of the church at that time. In particular, it was kept a secret from the Pope. Wang Lu could not help but smile, thinking that the group of holy light believers were actually smart. This kind of thing was indeed better to keep secret. Otherwise, if any pope knew that his strength was actually limited by others, perhaps he would not be reconciled. And since there was a capable person who could seal the power of the pope, naturally, there would be an astonishing pope who could lift the seal. However, that group of people could actually keep this secret for 1,000 years. This was too. Only the dead can keep secrets. Faceless One gave the answer in an understated manner. As for why he, a living person, could know about this, that was another story, and Wang Lu did not care. In short, what you mean is that the Sea of Holy Light is omnipotent, but its power in the human world is limited by others. But in 9 regions, Faceless One said, there is no holy light religion in 9 regions. As long as you are willing to convert to holy light, you are the only spokesperson in the human world. Wang Lu said, "Then where does the Sea of Holy Light come from?" Faceless One said, "Don't you have a wisdom sect? For a sect leader like you, it's not difficult to change the doctrine a little. In fact, I can now clearly see the power of faith lingering in your body. Unfortunately, you don't know how to use it." Wang Lu faintly smiled and did not say much. It was not only the Western continent people who were good at playing with faith. 9 regions also had the power to gather people's hearts. However, there was indeed no such strange existence as the Sea of Holy Light. In general, all religions must have a personified totem of faith, or an ancestor, or a god. But it was rare for Holy Light religion to regard nothingness as an idol. Of course, if you are not interested in the spread of Holy Light, I can do it for you. Just give me the position of Holy One, and then leave the rest of the work to me." Upon hearing this, Wang Lu could not help but sigh with emotion. This faceless one was indeed worthy to be an expert in bewitching people. His words left almost no room for refusal. Calling this guy into the king pill was indeed a dangerous move, but also a clever move. At least with faceless one, Wang Lu could be more determined to abandon the path of sword demons. As for the difficult-to-refuse condition that he put forward, very well, I'll do as you say. Give me the seed of holy light, and then I will appoint you as the wisdom sect's holy one. You will spread the holy light faith. As soon as this remark came out, faceless one was immediately stunned. Wait a minute. What did you say? Wang Lu said with a smile. I said, as you said, I have decided to convert to holy light. But, aren't you? Wang Lu said. I originally thought that no matter in the east or west continent, the sea of holy light is connected. Once the seed of holy light is implanted, it is tantamount to having a pair of shackles in the body. But since you said that there is no sea of holy light in 9 regions, and I will be the founder of holy light religion, then why not? Quickly, 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 I can't wait to convert to holy light. Quickly implant the seed of holy light in me. Let me be the founder, win the fair, rich and beautiful woman, and ascend to the peak of life. You don't care about the holy embryo? Do you really think I care? Underscore on the non-phase peak, the door of the simple bamboo room was pushed open. A woman in simple and elegant clothes dragged her heavy and stumbled in and then put the heavy bottle of wine on the table. How does it feel to be caught in a cocoon of your own making? On the wooden table, the dim ball slightly moved. Unexpected. Faceless one's voice was slightly tired. The woman in white chuckled. Unexpected? You obviously suffered a loss from him once, but you don't have a long memory. Faceless one was speechless. The woman in white's laughter was pleasant to hear, but how could he not perceive the murderous intention in it? His bet with her was, in the end, his loss and the price of failure. However, your ability to seek life in the midst of death is indeed not bad. Wang Wu said and then took the initiative to pour a glass of wine and put it in front of the ball. For your quick wit. However, as soon as she finished speaking, she took the glass and drank it. In any case, the ball couldn't drink wine, so this wine couldn't be wasted. In the immortal dreamland, when Wang Lu was ready to use you as a sacrifice to reveal his trump card, you were able to resolve his doubts in just a few words, making him mistakenly think that you are the reinforcement that I sent. This is your ability. Faceless one chuckled. Actually, until the end, he never fully trusted me. He wanted me to suppress the devil in his heart to achieve the pseudo-core. If I had a bit of a different thought, I would be the first one to be torn apart by his devil. Although he didn't believe you, he didn't kill you in the end. Instead, he allowed you to walk to the end as his assistant. It can be seen that regardless of whether what you said was true or false, it had a great influence on him, and your existence has indeed proved your value. And this is completely unexpected to me. I originally intended to use you as the bait for him to achieve the king pill, but in the end, you seized the opportunity to linger on. Unfortunately, in the end, it still fell short of success. Wang Wu said with a smile. Fell short of success? Not really. In the immortal dreamland, you helped little Lu win against the little girl of Shangjing sect, and the credit is real. Didn't I promise not to kill you? Are you worried that I won't keep my word? Faceless one didn't speak. Regarding the credibility of the master of non-phase peak, people who knew about it would not say too much. And Wang Wu very confidently ignored this question and continued. Your performance in the immortal dreamland proves that you have stolen the heaven's secret and found a way to survive. Therefore, I will not kill you, but I can spare you from the death penalty. It's hard to escape punishment. My holy light seed was fancied by you, which can be used to resolve the contradiction between Wang Lu and the king pill. However, if the holy light seed is to play its role, it needs the support of the sea of holy light, which requires someone to manage the sea of holy light. Then we made a bet. If Wang Lu couldn't see through the truth, then you would still plant the holy light seed and help him reconcile the two methods. But then, you will manage the sea of holy light and become the Lord of Faith. In the future, if Wang Lu needs the support of the sea of holy light, he would have to negotiate with you on an equal footing. Faceless one said, unfortunately, Wang Lu actually saw through the truth. As a result, I can only bow down to him as the Holy One. How does it feel to fall short of success? The ball trembled slightly. Faceless one said with a slight smile, not bad. In the future, If the Lord of Holy Light of 9 regions has the ability of Wang Lu, I can rest assured. Wang Wu was slightly surprised. Unexpectedly, you are the kind of person who would bravely carry your girlfriend to bed for the sake of lifelong sexual happiness. Faceless One indifferently responded. Everything I do is for the sea of holy light. As long as I can better spread my faith, I don't care about personal gain or loss. To be able to get strong support in this foreign land of 9 regions is really a pleasant surprise. Wang Wu finally had nothing to say. She happily drank another cup of wine, put the emerald green wine cup on the ball, and then left the bamboo room while laughing, flying to the Misty Peaks Golden Clay Hall. On the other side, Wang Lu's king pill had come to an end. Chapter 438. Using the adhesive nature of the holy light to forcibly combine primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi and non-phase method, the technique used across the 2 continents of 9 regions and Western continent, was simply an unprecedented feat. However, because it was a feat, the risk was also self-evident. The combination of 2 immortal-level methods, every step was full of unknowns, not to mention the critical juncture of the king pill. A little bit of carelessness would cause one's soul to fly away and scatter. However, since he had chosen this path, he could only resolutely walk on it. After seeing the domineering power of primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi and experiencing the unshakable stability of non-phase sword Qi in the kill immortal sea of blood, abandoning any one of them was as painful as castrating himself. From then on, he could no longer be a complete man. Right now, as Wang Lu was integrating his primordial spirit into his void core, there were still thousands of forks in front of him. The 2 widest paths, which symbolized the non-phase method and primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi, were gradually being pulled into one by the holy light seed. The holy light seed was personally planted by Faceless One. A golden seed was buried under his feet and soon took root and germinated. The underground root vein connected the 2 paths, and with the unique toughness of living things, it forcibly pulled them closer and closer. It was difficult to say how much of it was brute force and how much was a trick. Given that this was unprecedented in 9 regions and Western continent, no one could give a reasonable standard. Wang Lu only knew that when the 2 paths were completely combined into one, it was also the time when his king pill would be completed and he would truly set foot on the supreme immortal path. Becoming a Taoist master of the king pill was a critical breakthrough for cultivators on the road of immortal cultivation. When a cultivator comprehended the great Tao of heaven and earth, they would condense their own Tao in their jade mansion. Thus, their void core would turn into a real one, and inanimate objects would initially have spirituality. Only by carrying one's own Tao could one be qualified to truly become a cultivator, which was also the origin of the word Taoist master. For Wang Lu, comprehending the great Tao of heaven and earth was not a difficult thing. With his void spirit root, almost from the moment he was born, the great Tao of heaven and earth was displayed in front of him. Condensing his own Tao was also not difficult. If an ordinary cultivator could barely achieve any Tao, it would be enough for them to rejoice. If they didn't have a superior cultivation method or inheritance, they wouldn't even have a choice. However, as the lead disciple of Spirit Sword sect, there were too many paths that Wang Lu could choose. Among the thousands of forks under his feet, no one knew how many of them could lead to a very high level. If he continued to cultivate step by step, the achievement of Supreme was just around the corner. However, what he wanted was not just the title of True Lord, nor was it limited to ascension. Whatever he could do now, he wanted to do it to the best of his ability. Otherwise, it would be a waste of his long and solid accumulation in the Shudan stage. He had stayed in the Shudan stage for too long. Since he broke through Shudan stage with the help of the mountain spirit in Grand Cloud Mountain, Wang Lu had experienced a lot of experiential learning in this stage. The trip to Grand Cloud Mountain, the trip to Western Continent, and the group of immortal tombs, any one of them could be called legendary. If it was someone else, having a legendary experience once in their life was already very rare. One fortuitous encounter was enough to make people reborn. However, Wang Lu had experienced 3 experiential learning, yet he still stayed in Shudan stage. Such accumulation was difficult for any cultivator in the Wanxian League to compare. In the immortal dreamland, Wang Lu relied on this solid accumulation to contend against Qianghua with his pseudo-core. Then, the opportunity to break through to a higher stage finally came. The 50 layers of non-phase method was unified, and the magical power was smooth and smooth. Combined with the non-phase sword, which was also at the peak of the 50 layers, It was almost effortless to condense the king pill, and there was no need for external help. However, such a stage was undoubtedly a bit oversaturated. Now, it seemed that when his master forced him to cultivate to the 50th layer, perhaps she had already foreseen that Wang Lu's choice of Tao was no longer limited to non-phase method. Therefore, she used the 50th layer of non-phase method to ensure that even if Wang Lu had a change of heart in the future, non-phase method would still leave an indelible mark on his Tao. Realizing this, Wang Lu didn't know what to say. This kind of mentality of, if I can't get you, at least I have to get your child, was really worthy of being the master of non-phase peak who had been destitute all his life. However, Wang Lu didn't intend to abandon non-phase method. Or rather, even if he had the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi, he still intended to use non-phase method as the main body to shape his own Tao. Because this was simply a problem that couldn't be avoided. Non-phase method was not only the enlightenment method, but also accompanied him all the way to the present, experiencing countless hardships and dangers. When condensing the king pill, a cultivator's Tao should bear his own past, present, and future. And non-phase method was his past and present. To condense the king pill, how could he avoid non-phase method? Following the 51st layer of non-phase heart sutra taught by his master, Wang Lu began to circulate his magical power in the king pill. The highly dense magical power stirred his primordial spirit, and a bit of true yuan was born from the darkness. At the same time, the 51st layer of the non-phase heart sutra was instantly completed. Wang Lu saw that the thousands of paths began to sway and twist, and the two paths that were entangled by the holy light seed became more closely combined. The 51st layer of the non-phase heart sutra is really easy, and its only role is to strengthen the extensibility, so as to combine with other methods. TSK, Master, you really put in a lot of effort. Since Wang Lu broke through the 50th layer of the non-phase heart sutra under heavy pressure, the 51st layer of the non-phase heart sutra was only taught by Wang Wu when Wang Lu was preparing to break through the king pill. Considering that Wang Lu's non-phase method was created by Wang Wu, perhaps it took her a lot of effort to deduce this non-phase heart sutra for him to break through the king pill. And this was also the reason why, even though Wang Lu was deranged by Wang Wu, from another point of view, he still respected her as his master. Regarding his master's kindness, Wang Lu gladly accepted it. Then, on the basis of the 51st layer of the non-phase method, he resolutely stepped forward and integrated the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi into it. Boom! Wang Lu suddenly heard the sound of thunder in his ears. The primal chaos world was like a crystal ball that was hit by a heavy hammer. Countless fine cracks appeared on it. The two tightly entangled paths began to struggle to break free. The entire king pill in his jade mansion also trembled and tore, as if it was about to split into two. Wang Lu was shocked and quickly restrained the two, stopping the splitting trend. However, the progress was extremely difficult. Even with all his strength, he could only barely maintain the balance. However, he did not dare to relax. The splitting of the king pill was equivalent to cutting a person in half, not to mention that he had already immersed his primordial spirit into the king pill. The splitting of the king pill might only be a waste of cultivation base, but the splitting of the primordial spirit would undoubtedly lead to death. However, at this time, Wang Lu suddenly remembered something. The king pill was split into two? Suddenly, Wang Lu suddenly thought of his master's double king pill. Did she also experience a similar situation? The two incompatible paths eventually separated from each other, creating the double king pill? The unprecedented double king pill in 9 regions? Then, did his master teach him the 51st layer of the non-phase method in order to let him follow her path? Double king pill. It sounded like a good idea. If he could really coordinate the coexistence of the two king pill, when he needed to attack, he could use the heaven-splitting sword Qi, and when he needed to defend, he could use the non-phase sword defense. Although the switching would inevitably be sluggish, it could still be regarded as a bright path. However, that was his master Wang Wu's path, not the path that was suitable for him. His master's aptitude was mediocre, and the lack of the attribute of her spirit root made her have no other choice. However, he himself had the dignified void spirit root, so he shouldn't stubbornly stick to his master's path without thinking about making progress. Along the way, he had faced many seemingly impossible difficulties, so there was really no reason to retreat at this juncture. In the chaotic golden core space, in the face of the two main paths that were about to separate, as well as the seed of holy light that was about to be overwhelmed in the middle of the main path, Wang Lu was calm and collected. His primordial spirit continued to penetrate and penetrate again and again, unreservedly depositing it in a paste-like golden core. There was no immediate change in the situation, and the separation of the two paths was not stopped. However, Wang Lu was not in a hurry. He just continued to immerse his primordial spirit, maintaining his strength, and then waited for the miracle of time. The achievement of the King Pill was never achieved overnight. According to the records of the Lingzhen school, it was not uncommon for the fast ones to take 2 to 3 days, and the slow ones to take 10 to 15 days. Of course, there were those who were particularly unlucky. They had to retreat in the Golden Clay Palace for 3 years. Later, the elders of the sect couldn't help but come to check, only to find that the person who tried to break through had been possessed by the devil. They had been dead for many years, and their corpses had dried up. Since the beginning of his cultivation, Wang Lu had made rapid progress in everything he did. Now, he didn't care about stopping for a while in front of the King Pill. In the space of the King Pill, the monotonous and boring life made time seem to pass by quickly. After an unknown amount of time, the immersed primordial spirit was suddenly awakened by a cool feeling. In the space of the King Pill, the fine cracks, the chaotic fog, and the 2 bright paths had all disappeared. Only the intense, pure, and brand new magical power filled it and maintained its movement in a mysterious rhythm. The cycle was endless. When a cultivator was in the shoot on stage, the spiritual power was highly condensed, like a round pill. However, at that time the spiritual power was just condensed, and there was no qualitative change. Until now, Wang Lu found that this kind of spiritual power had become new and strange. It was not the non-phase magical power that had accompanied him for more than 10 years, but it had become more stable, tenacious, and full of vigor. So that's how it is. This is the real King Pill's spiritual power. Compared with it, the previous spiritual power is just like a knockoff. Feeling this brand new power, Wang Lu suddenly surged with infinite emotion. That was the feeling of being a cultivator, of being moved by the miracle of the immortal path. Although many people collectively called the spiritual power of the cultivators, but if it was carefully subdivided, from the beginning of the King Pill Taoist master, the spiritual power would evolve into true elemental energy, and the magical ability would rapidly expand. This was especially true for the disciples of the famous sections. Once the King Pill passed, their strength would simply double. As for Wang Lu, his harvest was more than any other cultivator of the King Pill. The new power had far exceeded the scope of the original non-phase method. If Wang Wu cultivated the non-phase method, then his original cultivation should be the modified non-phase method. Compared to the original version, all aspects of it were more refined. And now, it should be called the non-phase method, the devil's modification, right? The primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi had been truly integrated into the King Pill, becoming a power that he could freely control. Of course, Wang Lu did not intend to use it immediately, because at the critical moment, it could be used as a very strong card. But now, for the time being, he opened his eyes and re-examined the world with the eyes of the King Pill Taoist master. Thinking about it, Wang Lu opened his eyes with a smile. Then he saw the door of the golden clay hall, with a stunned face. His master hurriedly put her finger in front of her lips. In his primordial spirit, his master's pleading voice rang out. "Don't talk, let me hide for a while. Old Third, that son of AB*TCH, is chasing me to death. Isn't it just a few tens of thousands of spirit stones? Is there a need to be so stingy? That stupid Feng Yin inexplicably deducted my annual stipend, and I only took out a few tens of thousands of spirit stones from the treasury. That's very kind." Wang Lu was speechless. Damn, as the Taoist master of the King Pill, the first thing he saw was such an ugly thing. It was really touching. The next moment, Wang Lu gently opened his mouth, and the true yuan in the King Pill surged, so that his voice instantly spread throughout the 12 peaks of Spirit Sword sect. Even many of the protective arrays couldn't stop it. "I've caught the escaped fifth elder. 998 spirit stones. I'll bring the escaped prisoner home. UF** King dare to sell me?" At the same time, the door of the golden clay hall suddenly opened. "Fifth junior sister, accept the sex punishment." Chapter 439. Spring left and autumn came, and it was the annual autumn fat day of Lingzhen School. On this day, the chefs of the major cafeterias of Lingzhen School were busy, offering a sumptuous meal for the sect's disciples. Among them, the Carefree Peak Cafeteria specially invited a team of famous chefs from the Wanxian League's Heavenly Fragrant School. Their leader, Master Bai Chia, was impressively a Taoist master of Yuanying stage. His immortal feast had been famous in 9 regions for more than 100 years. Several disciples of Master Bai Chia had also inherited 50 to 60% of his skill. In the Carefree Peak, dozens of tables of wine and dishes were set out one after another. For a time, it was as if there was a rainbow pillar of light rising to the sky on the Carefree Peak. Even the mountain protection array could not cover it. Under the impact of the pillar of light, it was on the verge of collapse, as if it could not resist the temptation of delicious food. What was more valuable was that the dishes cooked by Heavenly Fragrant School could not only satisfy the appetite. Each dish had a unique effect, which, after eating, was greatly beneficial to one's cultivation. This was also the result of the growing reputation of Lingjian School, the expansion of business, and the increasing influence of the sect in recent years. In the past, the 6th elder, who was in charge of the sect's financial power, would not agree to spend a huge amount of money to hire a chef. Moreover, the masters of Heavenly Fragrant School could not be invited by money alone. For example, on this year's Autumn Fat Day, there were as many as hundreds of sects that submitted invitations to Heavenly Fragrant School, but only 2 or 3 of them could get their Yuanying stage masters to make a move. This year, even Royal Soldier Sect was not able to taste the craftsmanship of Heavenly Fragrant School. Moreover, the best craftsman in Heavenly Fragrant School, Master Bai Chia, uncharacteristically did not go to Shangjing Sect, but instead came to Spirit Sword Mountain in Blue River region. In fact, the biggest reason why Heavenly Fragrant School attached so much importance to Lingjian School was that, in recent years, Lingjian School's status in the group of immortal tombs had been rising, and its influence on Plentiful City and the group of immortal tombs even overwhelmed that of Shangjing Sect. And in recent years, Heavenly Fragrant School happened to need to collect food resources from the group of immortal tombs. Thus, the two sides hit it off. At the same time, the lead disciple of the younger generation of Heavenly Fragrant School would go to the group of immortal tombs next year to receive experiential learning. At this time, he came to Lingjian School to seek the experience of the currently recognized #1 person in the younger generation. A year ago, the 5 super sects of the Wanxian League sent their lead disciples to the group of immortal tombs at the same time to explore their respective series of immortal dreamlands. The 5 lead disciples accidentally encountered each other in the immortal dreamland and launched a fierce competition. The final result was particularly intriguing. In theory, the lead disciple of Shangjing Sect, Qianghua, had harvested the vast majority of the energy in the immortal dreamland with the Kill Immortal Sword. Hundreds of millions of creatures had been purified by the immortal sword, and the resonance between Qianghua and this immortal treasure had achieved an unprecedented great improvement, which was even rarer than the improvement of the realm. With Qianghua's aptitude, there was no bottleneck in her cultivation during the King Pill period. If she continued to cultivate step by step, then advancing to the nascent soul stage was almost guaranteed, and even reaching the deity transformation realm would not be difficult. However, the immortal slaughtering sword was an immortal artifact, so obtaining a perfect resonance with it was something that could only be chanced upon by luck. Nowadays, in the entire immortal cultivation world of 9 regions, the number of cultivators who could perfectly resonate with an immortal artifact could be counted on one hand. In addition to Qianghua, the improvement of Zhan Zai of 10,000 Art Sect, Zhou Mumu of Kunlun Sect, and Xiang Liang of Royal Soldier Sect was also obvious. Their overall strength was at least 10% higher than before, which meant that if they fought with their original selves, the outcome could be determined within 10 rounds. Then it was Wang Lu's turn. As the final winner of the 5 Blood Spirit Crown competition, his harvest should be the biggest. Even after Qianghua returned to the mountain, she vaguely showed her admiration for Wang Lu. Therefore, the world was curious about how many things he had harvested in this ring. What was the magical effect of the 5 Blood Spirit Crown? Unfortunately, unlike the other 4 disciples, Wang Lu immediately went into closed-door training as soon as he returned to the mountain. The reason was that he wanted to break through the King Pill stage. This also surprised those who thought that Wang Lu had already broken through to the King Pill stage. What was even more amazing was that Wang Lu's closed-door training was shockingly long. For a whole year, he was in closed-door training in the Golden Clay Hall, which was specially designed for the disciples of the Misty Peak to break through to the King Pill stage. If the elders of the Lingjian school hadn't confirmed that his breathing was stable during his closed-door training, many people would have suspected that he had failed to break through and died. Without the various anecdotes brought by Wang Lu, the 9 regions seemed a bit lonely. However, last month, the news that Wang Lu had successfully broken through to the King Pill stage finally came out, which shocked the cultivators who paid attention to Wang Lu and made them look forward to his next action. Wang Lu had always been a person who couldn't bear loneliness. In his more than 10 years of cultivation, he basically went into closed-door training on the mountain for a few years and then came out to do a big thing. After that, he would go back to closed-door training for a few years and then come out again to do another big thing. Now that he had been in closed-door training for a year and had successfully broken through to the King Pill stage, he ought to go down the mountain and show off his skills. However, Wang Lu was contrary to his usual behavior. After advancing to the King Pill stage, he just stayed in the mountain and refused to meet any foreign guests. During this period, Qianghua invited him to drink tea in Plentiful City, but he was declined. His arrogance was even bigger than that of many elders. Now, thanks to the visit of the Heavenly Fragrant School's cultivators, outsiders had the opportunity to see Wang Lu. In the Misty Peak cafeteria, the lead disciple of the Heavenly Fragrant School, Gao Tang, curiously looked at the handsome young man in front of him and couldn't help but think of all kinds of legendary stories about him. In Shudan's stage, he went to the Western continent, cooperated with the gods of the Western continent, and plotted to kill the Holy One of the Western continent, who was equivalent to a supreme. More than a year ago, he defeated the famous Qianghua fairy, and was now regarded as the strongest cultivator of his generation. And compared to his cultivation base in the Immortal Path, his strategy was even stronger. And he was fortunate enough to listen to Wang Lu's strategy experience, which was a rare and precious experience. It was just that, no matter how he listened to it, it felt strange. The second is to strengthen the leadership of the organization. The sect should clarify the leadership responsibility, set up a strategy team led by the elder in charge, and the backbone of each department should participate. At the same time, clarify the division of responsibility, to ensure that each link of the work has a corresponding person in charge. The fourth is to firmly grasp the implementation. We should earnestly strengthen the implementation of the task deployment in each link. Wang Lu's patient and meticulous lecture had lasted for almost half an hour. However, Gao Tang, who had always boasted of his good perception, felt dizzy. He only felt that every word that entered his ears could be understood, but when connected, it was like a mountain of clouds and mountains of fog. In the legend, there was a secret book called the Wordless Heavenly Book, which could only be understood by the predestined person. Now, it seemed that he had obtained a similar secret book. Although there were words in the heavenly book, its true meaning was still difficult to understand. Or rather, could it be that Wang Lu's experience in creating many miracles was this kind of bureaucratic work report? Heavenly Fragrant School did not hesitate to become enemies with Shengjing's sect and sent a luxurious team of chefs to Spirit Sword Mountain just for this kind of experience? As if seeing Gao Tang's confusion, Wang Lu, who was reclining at the dining table, suddenly looked up from the manuscript in his hand and said with a playful smile, "Junior brother Gao Tang, Heavenly Fragrant School's culinary skill is the best in 9 regions. Your respected Master Bai Chie's famous white sliced fragrant meat once lured a certain mountain to condense its spiritual wisdom, giving birth to a mountain spirit, which has the magical effect of turning life and death. May I ask, if you were to make that plate of white sliced fragrant meat, would it have the same effect?" Gao Tang somewhat ashamedly said, "I'm afraid it would be difficult even for 10% of my master's skill." "Then why didn't Master Bai Chie teach you the essence of white sliced fragrant meat?" Gao Tang said, "Cooking must be done step by step. My basic skill is far less than my master's. No matter how hard I work, my achievement in cooking a dish alone would be limited." Wang Lu said, "Therefore, in view of the fact that your IQ and ability are too different from mine, even if I teach you my experience, it would be meaningless to you. At present, the most suitable thing for you is this simple and vigorous report." Gao Tang couldn't help but ask, "But what I said just now, most of it is aimed at the overall requirements of the sect, not personal guidance. Moreover, those methods can't be implemented in a day. This is also," Wang Lu said with a smile. "Oh, I see. You want a quick way? That's simple. You quickly return to the sect and use the authority of the lead disciple to steal the sect's secret manual. Steal as much as you can, and then take the secret manual and betray the sect and seek refuge in the Royal Soldier Sect. The Royal Soldier Sect is one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, so their sect's construction can definitely meet my requirements, which can save you 80 to 90% of your effort. And they have been coveting your Heavenly Fragrant School's divine marching provisions for a long time. As long as you offer them the secret manual and promise to serve the Royal Soldier Sect wholeheartedly, Naturally, you will get many benefits. Gao Tang angrily said. Senior brother Wang Lu, don't go too far. Wang Lu's eyes turned cold, and the reflection of the king pill flashed in his eyes. In a split second, the biting cold aura made Gao Tang's whole body cold. The Shudon in his jade mansion issued a muffled sound and his magical power dissipated. As the most outstanding disciple of the current generation of Heavenly Fragrant School, he had cultivated for 30 years and had reached peak Shudon stage. However, unexpectedly, he couldn't withstand Wang Lu's casual stare. Let's be clear, the exploration of the group of immortal tombs has never been done by just moving your mouth. I can repeatedly create miracles because behind me is one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. The methods that I cultivate, the knowledge that I dabble in, the pills that I take, and the teammates that accompany me are all top level in 9 regions. Although your Heavenly Fragrant School is one of the top-ranked sects, when it comes to the exploration of secret areas and the actual combat ability of cultivators, it's only at the level of a middle-rank sect. And you, as the lead disciple, have amazing talent in cooking, but your cultivation is only at the level of my Lingzhen School's outer court disciple. Right now, if your Heavenly Fragrant School wants to gain something in the exploration of the group of immortal tombs, the only way is to strengthen the overall construction of the sect according to what I said. If you really can't wait, then you can only rely on Royal Soldier Sect. After all, renting is not as good as buying, and buying is not as good as selling. As long as you sell the sect, you can have everything. Seeing that Gao Tang was still tangled, Wang Lu sneered. If you don't want to listen, then get lost. In any case, the advance payment will not be refunded. Upon hearing this, Gao Tang sighed and sat down. Senior brother Wang Lu, please continue. Half a day later, Wang Lu's report ended. With a complicated look, Gao Tang put away the several opinions on Heavenly Fragrant School's exploration of the group of immortal tombs, and thanked Wang Lu. Before leaving, he reached into his bosom, took out a letter, and handed it to Wang Lu. This is what Senior Sister Zhou of Kunlun's sect asked me to bring. She said that previously, she sent more than 10 emails through the regular channel, but all of them fell into the sea. No matter what, she couldn't contact you. Therefore, she asked me to give this to you when I have the chance. Wang Lu somewhat curiously took the letter. Previously, he was busy sorting out the method, so he refused to accept any private messages. He thought that with his network of interpersonal relationships, no one would be in a hurry to find him. Unexpectedly, there was actually Zhou Mumu who was in a hurry to find him. Opening the letter, Zhou Mumu spoke concisely. A temporary meeting of the lead disciples of the 5 uniques will be held in the middle of next month. Qiong Hua, Xiang Liang, and some idiot have promised to attend. As for you, it's up to you whether you want to come or not. Who is begging you? The last few words penetrated the back of the paper, and an impatient anger came from the ink. Chapter 440. Okay, let's analyze the situation. Let's assume that the real intention of this letter is that Zhou Mumu, out of her strong and uncontrollable love for me, lured me to go to Kunlun Immortal World using the gathering of the lead disciples of the 5 uniques as an excuse. Then, through poisoning, bewitching, confusing, and other methods, she lured me to have an improper relationship with her on the spiritual level, thus forcing me to maintain a close relationship with her for a long time. So, how should I deal with it? In the Misty Peak cafeteria, several disciples of Spirit Sword Sect gathered together to discuss a major event. Senior brother Wang Lu, we know you very well. As the lead disciple of Lingzhen School, every move of yours is of great importance. Therefore, even if our power is meager, we will do our best to give you advice. But, do you really think Senior Sister Zhou would send you a letter based on that reason? At the dining table, Wen Bao had a helpless look on his face. Beside him, the curious Lu Li was excitedly looking around, both of her eyes shining. Seeing her in high spirits, Wen Bao asked, Sister Lu Li, what do you think? Lu Li said, what about Sister Aya's new dish? I heard from Wang Lu that Sister Aya has invented a new dish, and the taste is surprising, so I specifically came to taste it. Wen Bao said, do you really take this reason seriously? There's only one reason why the new dish in the Misty Peak cafeteria is surprising, okay? Really? I'm curious, which reason is it? A clear voice came from behind Wen Bao, which made all the hair on his body stand up. The next moment, a petite but powerful figure appeared at the dining table. Aya carried a heavy round plate and put it on the table. On top of a soft yellow cake, there was a sword-shaped candle. The top of the candle was burning with a blazing flame, but it didn't damage the sword. First of all, I wish you a happy first birthday. Aya gently smiled. According to the custom of U9 region's people, Taoist Master King Pill is a new disciple. Today should be the first anniversary of you achieving King Pill, so this stone sword is my gift. Then in my opinion, Zhou Mumu's letter should be true. The fierce true yuan on the letter doesn't seem to be deliberately fake. Although I'm only good at identifying swordsmen, Zhou Mumu's temperament is as straightforward as a sword, so she shouldn't be faking it. At the other end of the table, Wang Lu sneered and said, or maybe the other party is deliberately using this to confuse me. Aya shrugged helplessly and turned to leave. I'll prepare drinks for you. Senior brother Wang Lu, in my opinion. Perhaps senior sister Zhou wants to exchange pointers with you. The young man sitting next to Wen Bao was wearing a black and white robe. He was a bit older and had a Shudan aura around his body. Although he had not reached grand accomplishment, it showed that his foundation was deep. He was the inner court disciple who led Wang Lu to the small clear sky peak more than 10 years ago, Yu Yun. As far as I know, the rest of the chief disciples have often exchanged pointers with each other over the past year in order to verify their cultivation. Among them, there are 4 people who have won and lost to each other. In the case where senior sister Qianghua does not use her slaughter immortal sword, the disparity between them is almost the same. But if we want to truly confirm the ranking, we still need your participation. Wang Lu snorted. Believe me, after experiencing the battle for the 5 blood spirits crown, the 4 of them will not be interested in fighting with me. In a sense they are, after all, people with self-respect. Then, perhaps someone else asked senior sister Zhou to contact you? After all, you refused everyone's letter before. Perhaps some people thought that it was because your relationship was not good. And senior sister Zhou has the best relationship with you, so she is most likely to contact you? Yu Xinyao tried to guess. But Wang Lu continued to deny it. The problem is that Zhou Mumu's relationship with everyone else is not good. They should have asked someone else, but not Zhou Mumu. Wen Bao finally could not help but lament. Senior brother, this is not right, that is not right. We really can't keep up with you. Why did you call us here? Wang Lu lightly said, of course, I know the difference in IQ between you and me, so I called you here to rule out the wrong answer. Damn. Wen Bao suffered a major blow. Dispirited, he pinched a piece of cake and put it in his mouth. The next moment. Damn! If the cake maker was not the Night King, whose power was comparable to that of a supreme, Wen Bao would have vomited it on the spot. And Wang Lu was eating the cake as if nothing had happened, and then he looked at the letter in front of him and fell into deep thought. Zhou Mumu's letter was very urgent, but Wang Lu thought that this matter could not be rushed, because it was too strange. At the level of the lead disciples of the 5 uniques, almost everything was important. The 5 of them could decide on a small matter by themselves, but if it was related to the meeting of the lead disciples, it must be through the sect's channel. In other words, this letter should not be directly sent by Zhou Mumu to him, but should be sent by Kunlun's sect to Lingjian school. Because it came too unruly, Wang Lu had to doubt the real intention of this letter. Zhou Mumu hid it from the sect, and not only Zhou Mumu, but several other sects' lead disciples took the same action at the same time. There must be a reasonable reason. So let's go back to the original question. Do you think Zhou Mumu fell in love with me? Senior brother, I admit that senior sister Zhou does have enough reason to fall in love with you, but this possibility is too small. Wang Lu laughed in his heart. That was right. Although his relationship with Zhou Mumu was really good, even Wen Bao knew that it was almost impossible for Zhou Mumu to fall in love with him. And since it was not love, then the purpose of this letter, then he could only start to consider the second scenario. If this letter was sent for some not so good reason, then, since you are curious, then let's go and take a look. In the kitchen, Aya's soft voice came, and then the girl wearing a clean apron walked out of the kitchen with a cup of clear drink. As she walked, she took off the apron, and countless golden light spots gathered out of thin air and condensed outside her body. After a clear and crisp sound of metal, the girl changed into her usual military uniform. If you are worried about accidentally entering a dangerous place, I will accompany you. It just so happens that I have been idle on the mountain for too long, so I want to go down the mountain to have a look. Legend has it that Kunlun Mountain is the oldest immortal sect, so I am very interested in seeing it. With a supreme-level swordsman accompanying him, there was no place in 9 regions that he couldn't go. Wang Lu thought for a moment and said, "Since you want to go, it's not impossible for me to take some time to accompany you." 3 days later, Wang Lu and Aya appeared at the foot of the Immortal Mountain. Legend has it that Kunlun Mountain was the origin of the Immortal Path in 9 regions, and it was also the location of the most ancient sect in 9 regions. Standing in the Immortal Mountain, one could feel that the air was filled with a profound aura, which was the spiritual energy of Kunlun Mountain that only the cultivators of Kunlun Mountain could enjoy. At the foot of the mountain, Zhou Mumu had been waiting for a long time. Through the extremely fast frequency of footsteps, the girl's impatience could be clearly seen. "You're really late, my dear lead disciple of Spirit Sword Sect." After the obviously ironic voice, Zhou Mumu saw the petite girl next to Wang Lu and suddenly asked in surprise, "Hey, you actually brought someone with you?" Although it's not clearly written in the letter, this kind of appointment should be done alone, right? As soon as her voice fell, Zhou Mumu exclaimed again, "My God, a supreme expert?" Even if she was the lead disciple of one of the 5 uniques, when she saw a supreme-level expert in close proximity, Zhou Mumu would still involuntarily feel fear. This was an involuntary reaction due to the difference in level between cultivators. "But, you've really changed. You actually started to bring a bodyguard with you. Are you afraid that I'll harm you?" Wang Lu said with a smile, "Senior Sister Zhou, you misunderstood. Aya is not my bodyguard." With that, he put his arm around Aya's shoulder and, under the latter's surprised eyes, took her into his arms. "She's my girlfriend. We've known each other for many years and have long developed feelings for each other. It's just that because of the difference in age, nationality, stage and so on, there's no clear relationship between us. Recently, with the success of the King Pill, I realized that I must be honest with my feelings, so I began to associate with her. Don't look at her amazing strength, she's actually very clingy. When she heard that I was going to Kunlun Mountain, she kept pestering me to come with me. I couldn't dissuade her, so I had to agree." Wang Lu said and then smiled at Zhou Mumu. "Senior sister, you're also a person who's experienced in emotional matters, so you should be able to understand my difficulties. You're the one who's experienced." Zhou Mumu was silent for a long time. Her expression was twisted, wanting to say something but hesitating. Wang Lu thoughtfully said, "If you feel that there are too many things to say, you can try to smile. Well, since you insist on bringing an outsider, then do as you please. In any case, it shouldn't matter if it's just a Western continent person." Zhou Mumu shook her head, then stretched out her right hand, and a blood-colored spear appeared in her hand. "Do you remember this?" Of course, Wang Lu remembered. In fact, seeing a Ye's blood-marked divine spear really awakened a lot of memories. "Is this the inheritance that you got after you became the mistress?" "You're the fucking mistress." The blood-colored divine spear mercilessly stabbed out, but Wang Lu successfully blocked it with the sword of Mount Kuan. However, after that spear, Wang Lu's face slightly changed. "The feeling of this spear seems a bit familiar." "Yes, a bit familiar, right?" Zhou Mumu's face turned solemn as she put away the blood-marked divine spear. "Because all of this is not over yet, the battle in the immortal dreamland is still going on. When I first saw this blood spear, I thought it was my reward, but soon I found out that it was just a key to guide me to a deeper place. Perhaps it's because you've been in seclusion for too long that the signs haven't appeared yet, but I believe it's only a matter of time. At least a few others have. We've all encountered the same situation. The story of the demon world is not over." While speaking, Qianghua faintly interrupted. Her eyes glanced over at Wang Lu and Aya, and then looked behind her. Zhan Zai and Xiang Liang were already there, each with the inheritance that they obtained from the immortal dreamland. Their complexions were somewhat heavy. Regarding the background story of the 5 blood spirits' crown, they all had their own fortuitous encounter at the end of the immortal dreamland. Since it was related to the immortals and demons, they had to be cautious, and all kinds of encounters in the past year forced them to take some action. After a long silence, Zhou Mumu took the first step and said, "I think we may have to go to the demon world." You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.